They said she'd never walk again. They said love wasn't meant for broken things. Clara Whitfield, tech CEO, wheelchair user, invisible woman at her best friend's wedding, had accepted both as truth until a widowed single dad with kind eyes and a cookie-covered toddler asked one impossible question. Will you be my date? What happened next shattered every rule about second chances, shook a billion-dollar company, and proved that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone see you fall. Stay until the end, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The chandeliers at the Rosewood Grand Ballroom cast geometric shadows across 200 perfectly arranged tables, each one draped in cream silk and crowned with white peonies that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Classical strings floated through air thick with expensive perfume and quiet judgment. It was the kind of wedding where everyone smiled with their teeth but not their eyes, where conversations happened in polite murmurs, and where Clara Whitfield sat alone at table 17, watching the world spin without her. She'd positioned her wheelchair at the corner, always the corner, never the center, where the light was softer and the stairs were fewer. Her champagne flute stood untouched, condensation pooling at its base like tiny transparent tears. The bubbles had long since gone flat. Just like her, she thought bitterly, then immediately hated herself for the self-pity. Clara was 32 years old and looked like she'd stepped out of a Forbes cover shoot even now. Dark hair swept into an elegant updo, diamond studs that caught the light with every slight movement of her head, a midnight blue dress that cost $4,000 and had been tailored specifically to drape beautifully over legs that no longer worked the way they used to. She was beautiful in the way that made people uncomfortable, too polished, too perfect, too clearly trying to prove something. Her best friend Melissa was getting married. Melissa, who'd been her college roommate, her business partner in their first failed startup, her maid of honor when Clara had planned her own wedding 3 years ago. The wedding that never happened. The one that got canceled 2 weeks after the car accident that had crushed Clara's spine, shattered her pelvis, and sent her fiancé running faster than doctors said she'd ever walk again. He just couldn't handle it, people had whispered, thinking Clara couldn't hear. Some men aren't built for that kind of burden. Burden. The word had carved itself into her psyche like initials in wet concrete. She'd built her company, Whitfield Technologies, from a hospital bed, turned pain into productivity, transformed her grief into an empire worth $800 million. She'd been on magazine covers, given TED Talks, inspired thousands. She was the poster child for overcoming adversity, for turning tragedy into triumph. But none of that meant anything at a wedding where everyone else came in pairs. Across the room, Melissa floated in her wedding dress like something out of a fairy tale, her new husband's hand pressed against the small of her back with casual ownership. They'd done their first dance, an elaborate choreographed number that had everyone recording on their phones. Clara had clapped politely, her hands making hollow sounds that got lost in the applause. Clara, oh my God, you look amazing! She looked up to find Jennifer Morrison, another college friend, wobbling over in heels too high for her coordination level. Jennifer's husband trailed behind, looking vaguely embarrassed. Thank you, Clara replied automatically, smile fixed. You look beautiful too. I can't believe you came alone. Jennifer's voice pitched high with alcohol and tactlessness. I mean, I just think it's so brave. Like, you're so independent. I could never. Right, honey? Her husband made a non-committal sound and steered Jennifer toward the bar before she could continue. Clara's smile never wavered. She'd perfected it over 2 years. The gracious acceptance of pity disguised as admiration. The thank you for noticing my bravery when what she wanted to scream was, I'm lonely, not inspiring. She checked her phone. 8:47 p.m. The reception had started at 6. She could reasonably leave in another hour without seeming rude. She'd already done her duty, showed up, congratulated the bride, proved she was happy and whole and absolutely fine with her best friend moving into a life phase Clara would never reach. Marriage. Children. Normal. She was staring at her phone, debating whether to call her driver early, when she heard it. Daddy, that lady has a cool chair. The voice was high and clear, cutting through the orchestral arrangement like a silver bell. Clara looked up to find a little girl, couldn't have been more than 3, standing 5 feet away, pointing directly at her with a cookie clutched in her other hand. The cookie was enormous, nearly the size of the child's face, with chocolate chips that looked like they were trying to escape. "Maya, we don't point," came a male voice, gentle but firm. "Remember?" The man who appeared behind the little girl looked like he'd gotten dressed in the dark during an earthquake. His gray shirt was wrinkled, his tie slightly crooked, his hair sticking up on one side like he'd been running his hands through it. He had the exhausted eyes of every single parent Clara had ever seen, the kind that said, "I haven't slept properly in 3 years, but I'm still here, still showing up, still trying." "Sorry," he said to Clara, one hand on his daughter's shoulder. "We're still working on social awareness and volume control. Mostly volume control." But the little girl, Maya, wasn't deterred. She took 3 steps closer, cookie crumbs falling like snow. "Is your chair fast? Can it go super fast?" Clara felt something crack in her chest, just slightly. Not the familiar fracture of pity or condescension, but something else. Curiosity, maybe. Pure, unfiltered, 3-year-old curiosity without judgment. "Pretty fast," Clara heard herself say. "Not superhero fast, but faster than walking." "Cool." Maya's entire face lit up. Then, with the fearlessness only toddlers possess, she walked right up to Clara and held out the cookie. "Want some? Daddy says sharing is nice." The man, the father, looked mortified. "Maya, you can't just... The lady might not want..." "It's okay," Clara said, surprising herself. She broke off a small piece of the cookie. It was still warm, melting chocolate smearing her fingers. "Thank you. This is delicious." Maya beamed like she'd just brokered world peace. The man stepped forward, extending a hand. Up close, Clara could see he was probably in his mid-30s, with laugh lines around his eyes despite the exhaustion. "Daniel Ross. And you've met Maya, apparently. I'm really sorry about Clara Whitfield." She shook his hand, noting the calluses on his palm. Not office hands. "And don't be. She's lovely." "She's persistent," Daniel corrected, but his voice was warm. "We're friends of the groom. Well, sort of. I designed the playground at his community center. He invited half the neighborhood." He glanced around the ballroom with visible discomfort. "We're slightly out of our element." Clara followed his gaze, seeing the room suddenly through his eyes. The excess, the formality, the performance of it all. "You and me both," she admitted quietly. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe. Like he'd heard what she didn't say. Maya had climbed onto the chair next to Clara's, swinging her legs and humming something that might have been the Frozen theme song. Daniel moved to redirect her, but Clara waved him off. "She's fine. Honestly, she's the first person tonight who's talked to me like I'm not a TED Talk waiting to happen." Daniel's eyebrows rose slightly. "You're that Clara Whitfield. Whitfield Technologies. The autonomous vehicle accessibility features." "Guilty." "Maya's grandmother uses your app, the one that maps wheelchair-accessible routes." He pulled out the chair across from Clara, sitting without asking permission. It was oddly refreshing. "She says it's changed her life. She has MS." "I'm glad it helps." Clara meant it. That app had been born from rage, from every restaurant with steps, every subway station with broken elevators, every building that treated accessibility as an afterthought. "Though I'm guessing you didn't come over here to talk about software." "No." Daniel glanced at his daughter, who was now trying to feed cookie crumbs to one of the table's flower arrangements. "Maya, flowers don't eat cookies." "No, I came over because Maya saw you sitting alone and asked why the cool chair lady didn't have anyone to talk to. And I realized I was sitting alone too, hiding from small talk at the bar, and thought maybe we could be alone together. If that's not too weird." It was weird. It was completely weird. But it was also the first honest thing anyone had said to her all night. "Your wife?" Clara asked, noting the absence of a ring but not wanting to assume. "Left when Maya was 8 months old." His voice was matter-of-fact, practiced. Parenthood wasn't what she expected. I wasn't what she expected. She wanted the Instagram version, cute baby photos and brunch. The reality of diapers and sleep deprivation and a kid who needed specialists and early intervention therapy. He trailed off. She decided she'd rather not. Clara heard the story beneath the story. The abandonment, the judgment, the sudden solo navigation of a life that was supposed to be shared. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be. Maya and I are better off." He said it like he'd said it 1,000 times, like he needed to believe it. "What about you? Husband, partner, someone who'll show up later and wonder why his date is eating cookies with strangers?" "No." The word came out flatter than Clara intended. "There was someone, before." She gestured vaguely at her legs. "After the accident, he decided he'd signed up for a different life. Clean exit, very civilized. He even left the ring." Daniel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Civilized, that's one word for it. What word would you use?" "Coward." The bluntness of it startled a laugh out of Clara, a real laugh, not the practiced tinkle she used in interviews. Maya looked up at the sound, grinning like she'd personally caused it. "You laughed! Daddy, I made her laugh." "You did, Bug." Daniel's expression softened as he looked at his daughter. Then abruptly, he stood and made an awkward sort of bow. "Clara Whitfield, tech CEO and inventor of laugh-producing cookies. Would you be my date for this wedding? Because I don't know anyone here except a 3-year-old who thinks flower arrangements are hungry, and you look like you'd rather be anywhere else, and misery loves company. Or so I've heard." Clara stared at him. The question was absurd. They were strangers. He was clearly out of his depth in this crowd, with his wrinkled shirt and his precocious daughter. She should politely decline, stick to her plan, leave in an hour with her dignity intact. "I don't dance," she said instead. Daniel's eyes dropped briefly to her wheelchair, then back to her face. No pity, no awkward scramble to take back the offer, just a slight smile. "I didn't say you had to stand." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. Around them, the wedding continued, laughter and music and the clink of glasses. But in their small corner of table 17, something else was happening, something Clara hadn't felt in 2 years. Hope. It was terrifying. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Yes, I'll be your date." Maya cheered, throwing cookie crumbs in the air like confetti. Daniel grinned, genuinely grinned, the kind that reached his eyes and made him look 10 years younger. "Excellent. Fair warning, I'm a terrible conversationalist. Maya will probably fall asleep in about 45 minutes, and I have no idea what half these forks are for." "The small one's for oysters." "We're not having oysters." "Exactly." They fell into conversation like old friends, the kind of easy, wandering talk that doesn't perform or try to impress. Daniel designed playgrounds for children with disabilities. Ramps instead of stairs, sensory-friendly spaces, adaptive swings that could accommodate wheelchairs or walkers. He'd started after Maya's diagnosis. "She has cerebral palsy," he explained quietly. "Mild, but enough that regular playgrounds don't work. I got tired of watching her sit on the bench while other kids played, so I learned to build different." Clara felt something shift in her chest again. This man understood, not the specifics of her situation, but the fundamental isolation of being built different in a world designed for normal. "Maya seems remarkably mobile," Clara observed, watching the little girl attempt to teach the flower arrangement a dance move. Early intervention, therapy 3 times a week, and sheer stubbornness. Daniel's pride was evident. "She's got her father's inability to accept limits." "Is that where you got the wrinkled shirt?" He looked down at himself and laughed. "Maya decided this morning that my iron was a dragon that needed to be defeated. The dragon won." An hour passed, then another. Clara forgot about leaving early, forgot about being alone, forgot about the carefully constructed walls she'd built around herself. Daniel told stories about Maya's adventures, the time she'd tried to fix his truck with peanut butter, the ongoing war with bedtime, her absolute certainty that broccoli was poisonous but ice cream was a vegetable. "She's got a point about the ice cream," Clara said. "Dairy, calcium. Don't encourage her. She already thinks you're brilliant." Maya had indeed fallen asleep, curled up on 2 chairs pushed together, her head on Daniel's jacket. The band was playing something slow, and couples drifted onto the dance floor like flowers floating on water. Daniel stood abruptly. "Dance with me." Clara's stomach dropped. I told you you don't have to stand." He moved behind her wheelchair, hands resting gently on the handles. "May I?" She should say no. This was ridiculous. People were watching. But when she looked up at Daniel's face, she saw no pity, no performance, just an invitation to stop hiding. "Okay," she whispered. He pushed her wheelchair forward, slowly, onto the edge of the dance floor. Not to the center, he understood that much, but close enough. And then he did something Clara never expected. He spun her, gently, carefully, like she was something precious. Once, twice. Her wheels traced slow circles on the polished floor, and the lights overhead blurred into streaks of gold. It was nothing like dancing used to be. It was something else entirely. Something new. Clara felt tears on her cheeks and didn't care who saw. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, voice breaking. Daniel knelt beside her wheelchair so they were eye level. "Because everyone deserves to dance at a wedding, and because when Maya saw you sitting alone, she said, 'Daddy, that lady looks sad. We should share our cookies.' And my 3-year-old is smarter than most adults I know. She's remarkable. So are you. You don't know me." "No," Daniel agreed, "but I'd like to." The song ended, the moment stretched. Clara realized they'd drawn an audience, people staring, some filming on phones, others whispering. She braced for the familiar cocktail of pity and inspiration porn. Instead, she saw Melissa pushing through the crowd, wedding dress gathered in her hands, mascara smudged from happy tears. "Clara! Oh my God, Clara, you're dancing!" She dropped down beside the wheelchair, grabbing Clara's hands. "I'm so sorry. I should have made sure you weren't alone. I got so caught up in everything. Melissa, stop." Clara squeezed her best friend's hands. "I'm fine. Better than fine. I'm having a good time." "Because of him?" Melissa looked up at Daniel with open curiosity. "Because of cookies and terrible conversation and someone who didn't treat me like a motivational poster." Clara smiled, real and unguarded. "Go back to your husband. Enjoy your wedding. I promise I'm okay." Melissa hugged her fierce and quick, whispered, "I love you," and disappeared back into the crowd. Daniel checked his watch. "It's almost 11. I should get Maya home before she wakes up cranky." "Of course." They moved toward the exit together, Daniel pushing Maya's sleeping form in a collapsed stroller he'd retrieved from coat check, Clara navigating beside them. Outside, the night air was cool and sharp, clearing Clara's head. Daniel started, then stopped. "I don't usually do this, talk to strangers, crash dance floors." "Neither do I," Clara admitted. "Except cookie bribes from toddlers." She's very persuasive. She gets it from her father. Daniel smiled, but it faded quickly. "Can I be honest about something? Please." "When I saw you sitting alone, I thought, here's someone who knows what it's like. To be invisible in a crowded room, to have people look through you instead of at you. I'm not comparing our situations," he added quickly. "I just mean, loneliness recognizes loneliness." Clara's throat tightened. "Yeah, it does. So maybe, could I buy you coffee sometime? No pressure, just two lonely people being slightly less lonely together." She should say no. She should protect herself. Daniel was clearly dealing with his own struggles. Single father, kid with special needs, probably barely making ends meet if he was designing playground equipment. And Clara's life was complicated enough without adding someone else's chaos to it. "Yes," she said instead. "I'd like that." They exchanged numbers. Daniel lifted Maya, still sleeping, and secured her in a car seat in a beat-up pickup truck that had definitely seen better decades. Before he climbed in, he turned back to Clara. "Thank you," he said simply, "for saying yes, for dancing, for letting Maya share her cookie. Thank you for asking." He drove away, taillights disappearing into the night. Clara sat in the parking lot for a long moment, watching the wedding continue through lit windows. Music and laughter spilled out into the darkness, but she didn't feel excluded anymore. She felt possible. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Maya drew a picture in the car. 3 stick figures. "Says it's us. Might be the best thing I've seen in months. Daniel." The attached photo showed a child's drawing. 3 figures holding hands. One with wheels, one tall, one tiny, one above them, in messy letters, U.S. Clara saved the image and drove home, hands steady on her wheelchair's controls, heart unsteady in ways she'd forgotten were possible. She didn't know it yet, but that single evening, that one dance, had cracked something open in her carefully controlled life. The walls she'd built were showing their first fractures, and for the first time in 2 years, Clara didn't want to repair them. She wanted to see what happened when they finally fell. The drawing arrived at Clara's office 3 days later. Not digitally, though Daniel had already sent her the photo. This was the original, crayon on printer paper, carefully placed in a clear plastic sleeve and delivered by courier to the 42nd floor of the Whitfield Technologies building. Clara's assistant brought it in with the morning correspondence, eyebrows raised in question. "Personal delivery," Jennifer said, setting it on Clara's desk between quarterly reports and acquisition proposals. The courier said it was urgent, though I'm not sure what's urgent about. She tilted her head, studying the stick figures. "Is that you?" Clara's fingers traced the plastic covering. The figure on the left had careful brown scribbles for hair and 2 blue circles for wheels. The middle figure was tall with yellow hair. The smallest had curly black marks and what might have been a cookie in one hand. "Yes," Clara said softly. "That's me." Jennifer waited for more explanation, didn't get it, and retreated with a curious glance. Clara propped the drawing against her computer monitor where she could see it while she worked. Throughout the morning, through video conferences with investors and heated debates with her development team about the next product launch, her eyes kept drifting back to those 3 simple figures. U.S. She'd built an empire on the principle that accessibility wasn't charity, it was good business. Whitfield Technologies had revolutionized autonomous vehicles with features designed for disability from the ground up, not tacked on as afterthoughts. Voice-controlled navigation, wheelchair-compatible interiors, route planning that accounted for accessible entrances and elevators. The technology had made her rich and famous in equal measure. But sitting at her minimalist desk overlooking the city, surrounded by evidence of her success, Clara felt the loneliness that had been her constant companion since the accident. She'd told herself it was enough, the work, the impact, the legacy. She'd convinced herself that wanting more was greedy, that someone like her should be grateful for what she had. Then a wrinkled single dad and his cookie-wielding daughter had appeared at a wedding and reminded her that maybe, just maybe, she was allowed to want more than survival. Her phone buzzed during lunch. "Daniel, Maya wanted to make sure you got her masterpiece. She's been asking when we can see the cool chair lady again. Coffee this weekend? I promised to bring better cookies." Clara stared at the message for a full minute. Her therapist, the one she'd stopped seeing 6 months ago because she was fine, would have called this a pivotal moment. The choice between safety and risk, between the familiar isolation and the terrifying possibility of connection. She typed back, "Saturday, 10 a.m. There's a cafe near the waterfront, Harborview, fully accessible, and the coffee doesn't taste like regret." His response was immediate. "Perfect. Maya will bring her art supplies. Fair warning, she's decided you need more portraits." Saturday arrived wrapped in October sunshine and the smell of fallen leaves. Clara dressed carefully, jeans and a soft sweater, casual enough to suggest this wasn't a big deal while still looking put together. She hated how much thought she'd put into the outfit, hated more that she'd changed 3 times. The cafe was one she'd discovered shortly after the accident, during the dark months when leaving her apartment felt like climbing Everest. It had wide aisles, tables with removable chairs, and an owner who'd once told Clara that his sister used a wheelchair, and he'd be damned if his cafe wasn't somewhere she could feel normal. Daniel and Maya were already there when Clara arrived, seated at a corner table near the window. Maya spotted her first and launched herself across the cafe with the subtlety of a small hurricane. "Cool chair lady, you came. Daddy said you would, but I wasn't sure because sometimes grown-ups say things and then forget, but you didn't forget." The words tumbled out in a breathless rush as Maya grabbed Clara's hand. "I brought markers. Want to color?" "Maya, breathe," Daniel said, appearing behind his daughter with 2 coffee cups and an expression of fond exasperation. "Remember personal space?" "It's okay," Clara said, and meant it. There was something wonderfully uncomplicated about Maya's enthusiasm. No awkwardness, no careful navigation of what was appropriate to say. Just pure, unfiltered excitement. They settled at the table. Maya immediately spreading out a collection of markers that looked like they'd been through a war, Daniel sliding a latte across to Clara. "Vanilla?" she asked, surprised. "You ordered it at the wedding. I have an excellent memory for useless details." He took a sip of his own coffee. Black, no sugar. "It's a dad superpower. I can tell you exactly what Maya ate for breakfast on any given Tuesday for the past year, but I couldn't tell you where I put my keys this morning." "They were in the fruit bowl," Maya supplied, without looking up from her drawing. "You put them there when you were making my sandwich." "See? She's the one with the real memory." Clara watched them together, the easy rhythm of their interaction, the way Daniel's whole face softened when he looked at his daughter. There was exhaustion there, yes, but also fierce love and determination. "How old were you when she was born?" Clara asked. 32. "Old enough to know better, young enough to think I knew everything." Daniel's smile was wry. "Her mother and I weren't married. We'd been together for 2 years, talked about the future in vague terms. When Maya came along earlier than planned," he trailed off, watching his daughter color. "Some people rise to challenges. Some people run. Turns out I married the running type." "She doesn't see Maya?" "Christmas cards with $50 bills, occasional texts asking for photos she can show her new friends. She lives in California now with a venture capitalist who doesn't want kids." His voice was carefully neutral. "Maya asks about her sometimes. I tell her that some people love differently, and that's okay, that our family is just right the way it is." Maya held up her drawing, another stick figure portrait, this one with Clara wearing a crown. "You're a queen," she announced. "Queens are important." "What makes me a queen?" Clara asked, genuinely curious. "You're pretty and you have a fancy chair, and Daddy said you're really smart and help people." Maya returned to her coloring with the same focus she'd brought to the cookie demolition at the wedding. "Also, you're nice to me." Clara felt her throat tighten. "You're pretty easy to be nice to." They spent 2 hours in that cafe. Daniel told stories about his work, the playground he was currently designing for a school in the South Side, the ongoing battle with city permits, the kids who'd send him drawings of their dream play structures. Clara found herself talking about things she normally kept buried: the accident itself, the months of physical therapy, the slow realization that her old life was gone and she'd have to build a new one from scratch. "The hardest part wasn't the physical stuff," she admitted. "I mean, that was hell. But I could measure progress there, how many feet I could transfer, how long I could stand with assistance. The hardest part was the people. Everyone had this narrative they wanted to fit me into: inspiration, tragedy, brave warrior. They couldn't just let me be angry or sad or complicated." Daniel nodded slowly. "Maya's diagnosis was like that. Everyone wanted to tell me she was a blessing, a gift, that I'd been chosen for this. And I love her more than anything." He glanced at his daughter, who was now drawing what appeared to be a dragon. "But can I tell you a secret?" "Please." "Sometimes I'm furious. Not at her, never at her, but at the universe, or God, or whatever cosmic force decided my kid would have to work 3 times as hard for things other kids get easily. At her mother for walking away. At every building with stairs and no ramp, every doctor who talks to me like Maya's not in the room, every kid who stares and parents who yank them away like cerebral palsy is contagious." He stopped, took a breath. "Sorry, that got heavy." "No." Clara reached across the table, surprising herself by taking his hand. "That's the most honest thing anyone's said to me in months. Everyone wants sanitized emotions, acceptable grief, but real life is messy and complicated, and sometimes you're just angry at stairs." Daniel's laugh was startled and genuine. "Exactly. Angry at stairs. That should be a support group. I'll start a nonprofit. I'll design the logo." Maya looked up from her drawing. "Why are you holding hands?" Both adults froze. Clara started to pull away, but Daniel's fingers tightened briefly before releasing. "Because sometimes friends hold hands," he told his daughter calmly. "Are you friends now?" Daniel looked at Clara, eyebrow raised in question. She found herself smiling, real and unguarded in a way that still felt foreign. "Yeah," Clara said. "I think we are." The morning stretched into afternoon. They ordered sandwiches, then pastries. Maya cycled through enthusiasm, tiredness, and a brief meltdown about sharing markers before settling into drowsy contentment in her father's lap. Daniel ran his hand through her hair absently while debating with Clara about architecture and urban planning. The problem is that accessibility gets treated as compliance, Clara argued. Check the box, meet the minimum standard, move on. Nobody thinks about the experience. Exactly what I fight with every project. Daniel's passion came through in his gestures, his voice. I can build a ramp, but if it's at the back entrance by the dumpsters, what message does that send? You're welcome here, but only through the trash. Or elevators that break constantly and nobody fixes them urgently because the stairs work fine for most people. Or accessible parking spots that are too narrow for van ramps. They were drawing stairs, Clara realized suddenly. Not the usual stairs she got, the ones that were part pity and part curiosity. These were different, softer. People were seeing two adults engaged in animated conversation, a child dozing peacefully, something that looked almost like a family. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like possibility. I should get Maya home, Daniel said reluctantly as his daughter's eyes drooped closed. Nap time is non-negotiable in our house. They gathered Maya's markers, Daniel's jacket, the stack of drawings Maya had produced. Outside the cafe, the afternoon had turned golden, light slanting through buildings and catching on windows. Thank you, Clara said as Daniel maneuvered Maya into her car seat. For this, for... She gestured vaguely, unable to articulate what exactly she was thanking him for. For treating you like a person instead of a headline, Daniel suggested. Something like that. He closed the truck door gently, turned back to Clara. Can I ask you something that might be inappropriate? Her heart jumped. Okay. Do you ever wish people would just be honest? Stop dancing around things? Because I've spent 3 years having people carefully not mention Maya's disability or my situation or the fact that I'm clearly hanging on by a thread most days. And it's exhausting, the performance of being fine. Clara felt something unlock in her chest. Yes. God, yes, I'm so tired of being inspiring. I just want to be real. Then let's make a deal. Daniel extended his hand formally. No performance, no pretending we're not struggling, just honest, whatever that looks like. She shook his hand, holding on longer than strictly necessary. Deal. Good. In that spirit, I really want to see you again, not just coffee, but I'm terrified because I come with a lot of complications. A kid who needs extra attention and therapy and patience, an ex who might resurface at the worst moment, a bank account that laughs at the idea of fancy restaurants. And I haven't dated since Maya was born because who wants to sign up for this life? The vulnerability in his voice nearly broke her. You want honesty? I'm terrified too. Because men see the wheelchair and decide I'm too much work, too complicated, too broken. And I've convinced myself that's fine, that I don't need that part of life. But then you showed up at a wedding and asked me to dance, and I remembered what wanting feels like. And it's terrifying because wanting means you can lose. They stood in the parking lot, surrounded by the mundane sounds of Saturday afternoon, cars passing, distant laughter, a dog barking somewhere. Nothing romantic or cinematic, just two damaged people being honest with each other. So we're both terrified, Daniel said finally. Completely. Want to be terrified together? See what happens? Clara thought about her carefully constructed life, the walls she'd built, the safety of isolation. Then she thought about Maya's drawing, about dancing at a wedding, about the way Daniel had looked at her like she was interesting instead of inspiring. Yes, she whispered. Let's be terrified together. His smile was sunrise bright. Can I text you later? After I get the tornado down for her nap? I'd like that. He left then, driving away in his beat-up truck with his sleeping daughter. Clara sat in the parking lot for a long moment, feeling something unfamiliar in her chest. Hope. Dangerous, fragile, absolutely terrifying hope. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Made it home. Maya woke up long enough to say, "You're her favorite person now. You've been promoted from cool chair lady to Princess Clara." Apparently the crown in her drawing made it official. Clara laughed out loud in her empty car and typed back, "I've always wanted to be royalty. Tell her I accept the position. She says princesses need to come to dinner. How's Tuesday?" Tuesday works. Fair warning, dinner at our place means frozen pizza and Maya's running commentary on everything. Not exactly fancy. Sounds perfect. And somehow, impossibly, Clara meant it. The days between Saturday and Tuesday moved both too fast and too slow. Clara threw herself into work, trying to ignore the strange flutter in her stomach every time her phone buzzed. They texted constantly, Daniel sending photos of Maya's latest art projects, Clara sharing stories from disastrous board meetings, both of them trading messages late into the night after Maya was asleep. Honest question, Daniel wrote Monday night. Do you ever feel guilty for wanting normal things? I catch myself dreaming about simple stuff, sleeping past 6 a.m., having a conversation that isn't interrupted every 30 seconds, dating someone without having to explain my entire life history first. And then I feel like a terrible father. Clara stared at the message for a long time before responding. Every day. I feel guilty for being frustrated when people stare, for being angry that my body doesn't work the way it used to, for wanting someone to see me as more than my wheelchair. We're allowed to want things, Daniel. That doesn't make us bad people. It makes us human. You're wise, Princess Clara. I'm just well practiced at 3 a.m. existential spiraling. We should start a club. Angry at stares and existential spiraling. Our membership would be huge. Tuesday arrived with rain and unseasonably cold wind. Clara changed outfits 4 times again, finally settling on jeans and a sweater that looked casual, but had cost more than she wanted to admit. She programmed Daniel's address into her car's navigation system. He lived in a neighborhood she didn't know well, on the far side of the city where houses were smaller and closer together. The drive took 40 minutes in traffic. Clara's nerves ratcheted up with every mile, her mind spinning out scenarios. What if this was a mistake? What if she didn't know how to interact with a child for more than an hour? What if Daniel's house wasn't accessible and she couldn't even get inside? But when she pulled up to the address, she found a small bungalow with a ramp, clearly hand-built, leading to the front door. The yard was mostly dirt with a few struggling patches of grass, and a tricycle lay abandoned near the steps. Not what she was used to, not polished or perfect. It was real. Daniel answered the door before she could knock, Maya already pushing past him to grab Clara's hand. Princess Clara, come see my room. I made you another picture. Daddy made pizza, and it's only a little burned. Maya, let her get inside first, Daniel said, but he was smiling. His hair was damp like he'd showered recently, and he'd changed into a clean shirt. The effort was endearing. The house was small, living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms visible down a short hallway. It was cluttered in the way homes with children always are. Toys in corners, drawings covering the refrigerator, a pile of laundry on the couch that Daniel quickly moved. But it was clean and warm, and it smelled like tomato sauce and something baking. Welcome to chaos, Daniel said. Fair warning, Maya's been watching princess movies all afternoon and is convinced you need a proper throne. He gestured to the dining table where Maya had apparently constructed something out of pillows and a kitchen chair. Clara felt her eyes sting with unexpected emotion at the thoughtfulness. It's perfect, she said, and meant it. Dinner was exactly as advertised. Frozen pizza, supplemented with salad Daniel had clearly thrown together last minute, juice boxes for Maya, cheap wine for the adults. They ate at the small table with Maya between them, the little girl providing a running commentary on everything from her day at preschool to why broccoli was definitely poisonous despite what her daddy said. And then Tyler said, I run funny, but Miss Jennifer said everyone runs different, and that's okay, and Tyler had to say sorry, but I don't think he meant it because he didn't look at me when he said it. Clara watched Daniel's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. Did it hurt your feelings when Tyler said that? He asked gently. Maya shrugged, suddenly focused on her pizza. A little. I do run funny. Different than other kids. Different isn't funny, Clara said before she could stop herself. Both Rosses looked at her. It's just different. I move different than a lot of people too. Doesn't mean I'm funny. Just means I'm me. Maya considered this seriously. Do people say mean things to you? Sometimes. What do you do? Clara thought about all the inspirational answers she was supposed to give, about rising above, about not letting others define you. But they'd made a deal about honesty. Sometimes I cry, she admitted. Sometimes I get really angry. And sometimes I just remind myself that different can be special, that the world needs all kinds of people. Maya nodded slowly, then returned to her pizza with the subject apparently closed in her mind. But Daniel caught Clara's eye across the table, and the gratitude there was almost overwhelming. After dinner, Maya insisted on showing Clara her room, a small space painted pink and covered in more drawings, stuffed animals, and what appeared to be a collection of rocks. Maya explained the significance of each one with the gravity of a museum curator. This one's from the park. This one's from Grandma's house. This one I found in the parking lot, and Daddy said it was just gravel, but I like it anyway. They're beautiful, Clara said, examining a particularly gray piece of concrete. You have excellent taste in rocks. Daniel leaned against the door frame, watching them. Bath time in 10 minutes, Bug. Start picking out pajamas. Can Princess Clara stay for bath time? I think that's probably private time, Clara said gently. But I'll be here when you're done, okay? Maya accepted this with surprising grace and began the apparently elaborate process of selecting pajamas. Daniel led Clara back to the living room where they collapsed onto opposite ends of the couch. Thank you, he said quietly, for what you said at dinner about being different. She doesn't talk about it much, the stuff kids say, but I know it hurts. Kids can be cruel. Adults too, just more subtle about it. How do you handle it? The staring, the comments? Clara pulled her legs up, a complex maneuver that required thought and effort, and settled into the corner of the couch. Badly, mostly. I've gotten better at the public face, the smile, the gracious response. But privately? Some days I want to scream at everyone. Some days I don't want to leave my apartment because I'm tired of being a spectacle. Does it help? Talking about it? I don't, usually. Talk about it. She studied his face, the genuine interest there. Everyone wants the triumph narrative. I overcame, I'm stronger now, disability made me better. But the truth is messier. Some days I have overcome. Some days I'm still angry it happened. Both things are true. Daniel nodded slowly. Maya's mother used to tell me I was too negative, that I needed to embrace the journey, find the blessing. She bought all these books about special needs parenting, joined online groups, posted these long inspirational updates. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Then she left. Turns out it's easier to perform positivity than actually live it. I'm sorry she did that to you, to both of you. We're better off, he said again, like a mantra. Then quietly, most days I believe that. The bathroom door opened, and Maya emerged in princess pajamas, hair damp and smelling like strawberry shampoo. She climbed onto the couch between them without asking, burrowing into her father's side. Story time, she announced. What about Princess Clara? Daniel asked. Maybe she needs to go home. Stay, Maya said, grabbing Clara's hand with her small, damp one. Please? Daddy's good at stories. He does all the voices. Clara looked at Daniel, found him studying her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Question? Hope. Uncertainty. I'd love to stay, she said. They read 3 books, Daniel doing voices that made Maya giggle and Clara laugh, the little girl's energy gradually winding down until she was heavy-lidded and yawning. When the 3rd book ended, Maya was already half asleep. Bedtime, Bug, Daniel said softly, scooping her up. Say goodnight to Princess Clara. Night, Princess, Maya mumbled into her father's shoulder. Love you. The casual declaration hit Clara like a physical force. She felt tears spring to her eyes and blinked them back quickly. Good night, Maya. I love you too. Daniel carried his daughter to her room. Clara sat on the couch, listening to the quiet sounds of bedtime routine, water running, gentle murmurs, the creak of a mattress. She studied the room around her, the secondhand furniture, the crayon marks on one wall that Daniel hadn't managed to clean completely, the collection of toy trucks lined up with military precision. This wasn't her world. She lived in a penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture chosen by a designer. She ate at restaurants that required reservations weeks in advance. Her life was carefully controlled, methodically planned. This was chaos. Beautiful, imperfect, overwhelming chaos. She was falling in love with it. Daniel returned 15 minutes later, dropping onto the couch with an exhausted sigh. She's out, That doesn't always happen so easily. You're apparently magic. Or she was just tired. No, definitely magic. He shifted to face her. Can I be honest about something? Clara's heart jumped. We made a deal. Right. Honesty. He took a breath. Today terrified me. Having you here. In our space. Because Maya gets attached quickly, and if this, whatever this is, doesn't work out, she'll be hurt. And I can handle being hurt. I've been hurt. But watching my kid hurt, he trailed off. I should have thought this through better before inviting you to dinner. Do you want me to leave? No. The word came out fast and emphatic. That's the problem. I don't want you to leave. I haven't wanted you to leave since the wedding. And that's terrifying because I don't know how to do this. Date someone, introduce them to my kid, figure out if there's something real here, or if we're just two lonely people filling empty space. Clara felt her pulse in her throat. I'm terrified too, because this... She gestured at the house, at the toys, at the hallway where Maya slept. This is real life. Complicated and messy and full of needs I don't know if I can meet. I don't know how to be around kids. I don't know if I'm capable of being what you both need. What do you think we need? I don't know. Someone patient, someone good, someone less broken than I am. Daniel moved closer, carefully, like approaching something wild. Can I tell you what I think? From my extremely biased perspective? She nodded, not trusting her voice. I think Maya needs someone who treats her like a person, not a diagnosis. Someone who tells the truth instead of patronizing her. Someone who says, I don't know, instead of pretending to have all the answers. He paused. And I need someone who understands that life is hard and complicated, and sometimes you're just angry at stairs. Someone who doesn't expect me to be fixed or healed or over it. Someone real. That's a low bar, Clara whispered. You'd be surprised how rare it is. His hand found hers on the couch between them. I'm not asking for promises. I'm not asking you to figure everything out right now. I'm just asking, can we try? See what happens? Take it slow and honest and just, see? Clara looked down at their hands, his calloused and large, hers smaller and marked with scars from the accident. Two damaged people reaching for each other across the rubble of their separate disasters. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was a mistake, that she should protect herself, that she wasn't equipped for this kind of vulnerability. But then she remembered Maya saying, love you, with casual certainty. Remembered the way Daniel looked at his daughter. Remembered dancing at a wedding and feeling possible for the first time in 2 years. Okay, she said, let's try, slow and honest and terrifying. Daniel's smile was like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Yeah? Yeah. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he kissed her, gentle and questioning, nothing like the confident kisses from her previous life. This was uncertain, hopeful, real. When they broke apart, Daniel laughed quietly. I forgot how to do this. That was probably terrible. It was perfect, Clara said, and kissed him again. They stayed on that couch for another hour, talking and kissing and planning their next date. When Clara finally left, driving home through streets that had gone quiet with late night, she felt different, lighter, like she'd been carrying weight she hadn't realized was there. Her phone buzzed at a red light. Daniel, Maya just woke up asking if you're real or if she dreamed you. I told her you're real. You are real, right? Because if I imagined this whole evening, I'm going to be really disappointed. Clara smiled, typing back with one hand. Very real. Still terrified. But real. Good. Same. Sleep well, Princess Clara. Good night, wrinkled shirt dad. She drove home thinking about small hands and honest conversations and the way possibility felt after 2 years of careful survival. She didn't know where this was going, didn't know if they could make it work. But for the first time since the accident, Clara wasn't planning 3 steps ahead. She was just living, messy and uncertain and absolutely terrifying. And it felt like coming back to life. The weeks that followed felt like learning to breathe underwater. Strange and difficult, and somehow beautiful. Clara found herself integrating into the chaotic rhythm of Daniel and Maya's life in ways she'd never imagined possible. Tuesday dinners became standing tradition. Then Thursday lunches. Weekend mornings at the park where Daniel was designing his latest playground, Maya providing running commentary on every design choice while Clara sketched accessibility features in a notebook. "The slide needs to be wider," Maya announced one Saturday, hands on her hips in a pose that was pure Daniel. "So kids in chairs can go down too, like Princess Clara." Daniel looked up from the foundation he was measuring, catching Clara's eye with a smile that still made her heart stutter. "The princess has spoken. Wider slide it is." They were careful around each other still, dancing around the bigger questions, the what are we and where is this going conversations. But there were moments, his hand finding hers while Maya dozed in the truck, her head on his shoulder during movie nights after Maya was asleep. Kisses that started gentle and turned desperate before one of them pulled back, remembering the sleeping child down the hall and the fact that they'd promised to take this slow. "I'm losing my mind," Daniel whispered one night, forehead pressed against Clara's after they'd broken apart for the third time. "You're killing me with this slow thing." "You're the one who suggested it," Clara reminded him breathlessly. "Past me was an idiot. Past you was protecting his daughter." "Yeah." Daniel pulled back slightly, running his thumb along her jaw. "I just didn't expect this. You. How much I'd want—" He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Clara felt it too, the wanting that had grown from possibility into something bigger and more terrifying, something that felt dangerously close to need, but it was the small moments that undid her completely. The way Daniel had modified his truck to accommodate her wheelchair without making a big deal about it. How Maya had started including Clara in every story she told. And then me and Daddy and Princess Clara went to the store even when Clara hadn't been there. The night Daniel called at 2 a.m, voice rough with exhaustion, asking if she was awake because Maya was sick, and he just needed to hear another adult's voice to remember he wasn't alone. Clara had stayed on the phone for an hour, talking him through fever management and when to worry and when to breathe. The next morning, she'd shown up with soup and children's medicine and the realization that she'd stopped thinking of this as something temporary. She was falling, had fallen, was currently plummeting without a parachute towards something that looked terrifyingly like love. "You're different," her assistant Jennifer observed one Monday morning, studying Clara across her desk. "You smile at your phone now. You leave the office before 8 p.m. You're—" She paused, searching for the word. "Happy?" Clara felt her cheeks heat. "I'm the same." "You're absolutely not. And whoever's responsible for those text messages you keep smiling at, they're good for you." Jennifer gathered her tablet and coffee. "Just be careful, okay? You've worked too hard to let anyone mess up what you've built here." The warning stayed with Clara throughout the day, nagging at her during meetings and conference calls. Jennifer wasn't wrong to be concerned. Clara had built Whitfield Technologies from nothing, had fought for every inch of respect in an industry that wanted to treat her as inspiration rather than innovator. She'd made herself untouchable, unshakable. And now she was letting a playground designer and his 3-year-old daughter crack through defenses she'd spent 2 years constructing. Her phone buzzed during a particularly tedious budget review. "Daniel, Maya's preschool is doing a family project, build something together out of recyclables. She wants you to help. I tried to explain you're busy running an empire, but she's very insistent. No pressure, though." Clara found herself typing back before she could overthink it. "What time should I be there? Seriously? Seriously. I'll bring my engineering expertise. Which recyclable materials are we working with? Cardboard boxes, bottle caps, and Maya's absolute certainty that we can build a castle. Fair warning, her vision exceeds our skill level. Lucky for you both, I have an engineering degree and disposable income. I'll bring supplies." She showed up at Daniel's house that evening with 2 bags from a craft store and a third filled with Chinese takeout. Maya met her at the door with a shriek of delight that probably violated noise ordinances. "You came! Daddy said maybe you were too busy, but I knew you'd come because princesses help with castles." The castle project consumed 3 hours, most of the living room floor, and resulted in a structure that defied both physics and good taste. Maya directed operations like a tiny general, while Daniel and Clara tried to translate her vision into something that wouldn't collapse immediately. "It needs towers," Maya insisted. 4 towers, and a bridge, and a place for the dragon." I thought this was a castle for princesses, Daniel said, attempting to hot glue a toilet paper roll to a cereal box. Princesses and dragons. They're friends in my castle. Clara found herself laughing, really laughing, the kind that came from somewhere deep and genuine. She was sitting on the floor covered in glitter and glue, helping a 3-year-old build a structurally unsound castle, and she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this light. What? Daniel asked, catching her expression. Nothing. Just 6 months ago, I was giving a keynote speech about the future of autonomous vehicles to 1,000 people. And now I'm negotiating Dragon Princess Détente via cardboard architecture. Regretting your life choices? She looked at Maya, who was narrating an elaborate story about the dragon's backstory while decorating a bottle cap with marker. Then at Daniel, who had glitter in his hair and was watching her with an expression that made her heart ache. Not even a little bit, Clara said softly. Something shifted in Daniel's face, a decision made, a line crossed. Maya Bug, can you go wash your hands? You're about 90% glue at this point. Maya examined her sticky fingers and agreed, wandering toward the bathroom while singing something about dragons. The moment she was gone, Daniel moved closer to Clara. I need to say something, and I'm probably going to say it badly because I'm terrible at this, but it's been eating at me for weeks and I just... He stopped, started again. I'm falling in love with you. Maybe already have fallen. And I know we said slow and careful and protect Maya, but I can't keep pretending this is casual when every time you leave I count the hours until I see you again. When Maya draws pictures of our family, and I want that to be real. When I'm lying in bed at night, imagining what it would be like to wake up next to you. Clara's breath caught. Daniel. Wait, let me finish before I lose my nerve. He took her hands, glitter-covered and trembling slightly. I know I'm not what you probably imagined. I live in a house that's falling apart. I drive a truck that's older than our relationship. I have a kid who needs extra everything, and an ex who could show up and cause chaos and approximately $17 in my savings account. But I'm asking anyway. I'm asking if there's a chance, any chance, that you could see a future with us. Because I see it. I see you here. I see Maya growing up knowing you. I see building something real. Water was running in the bathroom, Maya singing off-key. The castle sat between them, ridiculous and perfect. Clara felt tears on her cheeks and didn't wipe them away. I'm terrified, she whispered, because I see it too. And I don't know how to do this. Be part of a family, be responsible for a child's heart, risk everything I've built for something this uncertain. But yes, I want to try. I want the future you're describing, even though it scares me senseless. Daniel kissed her then, deep and certain, no hesitation. When Maya burst back into the room demanding they finish the castle, neither adult moved apart quickly. Maya looked between them, head tilted in consideration. Are you being mushy? She asked. Very mushy, Daniel confirmed. Okay, but the castle needs a roof still. They finished the castle as a family, that word hovering unspoken, but present in every glance, every touch, every moment. When Maya finally fell asleep that night, Castle guarding her bedside, Clara stayed, not leaving after a few stolen kisses, not making excuses about work tomorrow. She stayed, curled into Daniel's side on the couch, talking about things that mattered. What happens now? She asked quietly. Do I meet Maya's grandmother? Do we tell people? What does this look like? I don't know, Daniel admitted. I've never done this before. Introduce someone to my life as more than just daddy's friend. But I want to. I want everyone to know you're mine. If that's okay. If that's what you want. It is. But Daniel... She sat up, needing him to see her face. My world is complicated. There's press sometimes, board meetings where I have to be Clara Whitfield, CEO, not just Clara, events where I need to be on. Can you handle that? Can Maya? You think your life is the complication? Daniel laughed softly. Clara, you run a company. I chase a 3-year-old and build playgrounds. You have a penthouse. I have a mortgage I'm barely making. You're on magazine covers. I'm covered in paint and sawdust most days. If anyone should be worried about complication, stop. Clara pressed her fingers to his lips. None of that matters. Your life, Maya, your work, this house, It's real. It's beautiful. I just need you to know what you're signing up for. A brilliant, complicated woman who makes my daughter laugh and challenges me to be better and kisses me like I'm worth something? Daniel caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. Yeah, I think I can handle that. They fell asleep on the couch, wrapped around each other like teenagers. When Clara woke at dawn to Maya standing inches away, staring at them with unnerving intensity, she nearly screamed. You stayed, Maya whispered, eyes wide. For sleep time. I did, Clara confirmed, fully awake now and uncertain of the protocol here. Is that okay? Maya considered this with the gravity of someone making a life-altering decision. Then she climbed onto the couch, wedging herself between Clara and her father, and announced, Now we're all together, like the picture I drew. Daniel stirred, opening one eye. Maya, it's 6 a.m. Why are you awake? Because Princess Clara is here and we need to make pancakes. She's never had our pancakes. I make terrible pancakes, Daniel warned Clara. They're a little burned, Maya agreed cheerfully, but we put lots of syrup. They made pancakes, lumpy, unevenly cooked, drowning in syrup. Maya narrated the entire process while Daniel and Clara moved around the small kitchen in a dance that was becoming familiar. When they sat down to eat, Maya between them at the table, Clara felt something settle in her chest. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of something bigger than fear. Belonging. The following week brought Daniel to Clara's world. She'd invited him and Maya to a company event, a celebration of Whitfield Technology's latest accessible vehicle prototype. It was being held at a gallery downtown, with press coverage and investors and all the polished performance Clara usually navigated alone. Are you sure about this? Daniel asked for the third time, adjusting his tie in Clara's penthouse bathroom. This isn't my scene. I don't know how to talk to investors. You talk about playgrounds and accessibility and why design matters. Clara rolled up beside him, reaching up to fix his tie properly. You talk about Maya and what she needs from the world. That's all this is. People who care about making things better. People who could buy my house 3 times over with what they spend on watches. Some of them, yes. Others are just passionate about accessibility. She finished with his tie, letting her hands rest on his chest. And you're with me. That's all that matters. Maya appeared in her new dress, navy blue with white flowers, chosen specifically because it matched what Clara was wearing. Do I look fancy? You look beautiful, Clara told her honestly. Very grown up. Daddy cried when he saw me. I did not cry, Daniel protested. My eyes were watering. There's a difference. He cried, Maya told Clara confidentially. The gallery was packed when they arrived. 200 people circulating among displays of vehicle interiors, accessibility technology, and marketing materials. Clara felt Daniel tense beside her as they entered, his hand finding hers automatically. Breathe, she murmured. You've got this. But within 5 minutes, Clara realized her mistake. This wasn't just a celebration. It was a performance. And she'd brought Daniel and Maya into the spotlight without fully preparing them for what that meant. Clara, darling! Patricia Chen, one of her biggest investors, swept over an address that cost more than Daniel's truck. And who is this? Her eyes raked over Daniel with barely concealed assessment, landing on Maya with practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Patricia, this is Daniel Ross and his daughter Maya. Daniel, Patricia Chen, she was one of our first major investors. A playground designer, I hear? Patricia's tone made it clear she'd already done research. How, quaint. And you brought your child? This directed at the event in general, like children were exotic animals unexpectedly loose. Maya, who'd been examining the vehicle displays with fascination, looked up at Patricia's tone. Even at 3, she could sense dismissal. Maya's very interested in design, Clara said evenly. Accessibility is often about understanding what children need. Of course. Patricia's smile sharpened. Well, I'll let you get back to family time. Clara, we should talk about the Series C later, privately. She glided away. Daniel's jaw was tight, his hand rigid in Clara's. I shouldn't have come, he said quietly. Don't. Clara squeezed his hand. She's like that with everyone. It's not personal. Felt pretty personal. Before Clara could respond, a photographer approached. Ms. Whitfield, can we get some photos with the prototype? It was routine. Clara posing with the vehicle, answering questions about features, but with Daniel and Maya standing awkwardly to the side, watching her perform, it felt different. Staged. Fake. She saw herself through their eyes, polished, untouchable, playing a role. The evening deteriorated from there. Maya grew tired and overwhelmed by the noise and crowds. Daniel tried to manage her meltdown quietly, but a 3-year-old having sensory overload in a silent gallery was impossible to hide. Clara watched people stare, saw the judgment in their eyes. The unspoken question, why would successful Clara Whitfield bring them here? I'm taking her outside, Daniel said tightly, Maya crying in his arms. I'm sorry, we're ruining your event. You're not... But he was already moving toward the exit, Maya's sobs echoing off the gallery walls. Clara started to follow, but her CFO caught her arm. Clara, the board members want to speak with you about Q4 projections. It'll just take a minute. A minute became 20. By the time Clara made it outside, Daniel had already loaded Maya into the truck. She was calmer now, curled in her car seat with her father's jacket over her. I'm sorry, Clara said, rolling up to the driver's side window. I didn't think... It's not your fault. Daniel's voice was flat. This is your world. I get it. We don't fit here, Clara. Maya needed quiet and patience, and we got stares and judgment. And you needed to be CEO Clara, not our Clara. I don't blame you, but I can't do that. Can't watch my kid feel like she doesn't belong. She belongs with me, Clara said desperately. You both do. In your life, maybe, but not in that. He gestured toward the gallery. Be honest. What did people think when they saw us? The handyman and his disabled kid crashing the fancy tech party? The words hit like physical blows because Clara had heard the whispers, seen the looks. Patricia Chen's expression had said everything. What is Clara Whitfield doing with them? I don't care what they think, Clara said, but her voice wavered. You should. You've built something incredible. I won't be the reason you lose respect or credibility or whatever it is people like Patricia decide matters. He started the truck. I need to get Maya home. I'll call you tomorrow. Daniel? Tomorrow, Clara. I need to think. He drove away, leaving Clara in the gallery parking lot surrounded by expensive cars and the sound of networking happening inside. She should go back in. Finish the event. Play her role. Instead, she sat in her car and cried for the first time since she'd met Daniel and Maya, because she'd been so focused on whether she could fit into their world that she'd never stopped to consider whether they could fit into hers, and tonight had proven what she'd been afraid of from the beginning. Maybe they couldn't. Her phone buzzed. Jennifer. Where are you? Board members are asking. Clara stared at the message, then at the gallery doors. Inside was everything she'd built. Her company. Her reputation, the life she'd fought for. But Daniel and Maya were driving away, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just lost something infinitely more valuable than investor approval. She went back inside, smiled, networked, answered questions, performed flawlessly, and felt absolutely hollow doing it. Daniel didn't call the next day, or the day after. Clara gave him space, told herself he needed time to process, that this was just a bump, that they'd figure it out. But by day 3, the silence was deafening. She broke first, texting, Can we talk? Please? The response came an hour later. Maya's asking for you. Can you come for dinner? We need to figure this out. Clara drove to Daniel's house that evening with her stomach in knots. She'd prepared a speech about how they could make this work, how she'd be more careful about which events she brought them to, how her world didn't matter as much as theirs. But when Daniel opened the door, the exhaustion on his face stopped her cold. She hasn't slept well since Saturday, he said without preamble. Nightmares about loud places and people staring. Her therapist says it triggered some anxiety we'd been working through. He stepped back to let Clara in. She's in her room. She wants to see you, but... Clara, we need to talk first. They sat in the living room, the same couch, where they'd built a castle, where they'd fallen asleep together. where he told her he was falling in love. Now it felt like a courtroom. "I can't do it," Daniel said quietly. "The gallery, seeing Maya suffer because I was trying to fit somewhere we don't belong. I can't put her through that. She's 3. She doesn't understand why people looked at her like she was a problem. And I can't explain it without making her feel like she is a problem. She's not. I know that. You know that. But your world doesn't know that. To them, we're complications. The charity case CEO Clara is slumming with. And maybe that's unfair. Maybe I'm projecting my own insecurities. But I watched my daughter cry herself to sleep for 3 nights. And I can't." His voice cracked. "I can't risk her heart on something that might not work." Clara felt tears streaming down her face. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't know. I'm saying I love you. And that's terrifying because love isn't enough if our worlds are incompatible. I'm saying Maya asked me this morning if Princess Clara stopped liking her because she cried at the fancy party, and I didn't know how to answer." "Can I see her?" Clara asked through tears. "Please?" Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "She's been asking for you." Maya's room was dark, except for a nightlight shaped like a moon. The little girl was sitting up in bed, clutching a stuffed bear and the drawings she'd made of their family. "Princess Clara," she whispered when Clara rolled in. "You came." "Of course I came." Clara moved to the bedside, taking Maya's small hand. "I'm sorry about the party, that it was scary and loud. Did I do something bad?" "No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes places are just too much. That's okay." "Daddy said we might not see you anymore." Maya's voice was so small. "Because we don't match your fancy life." Clara felt her heart shatter. "That's not—" "Maya, listen to me. You and your daddy are the best things that have happened to me in a very long time. The fancy stuff doesn't matter. You matter." "Then why did those people look at me like I was bad?" How do you explain adult prejudice to a 3-year-old? How do you tell a child that the world is often cruel to different, that people judge without understanding, that sometimes love isn't enough to bridge the gaps? "Some people don't know how to be kind," Clara said finally. "They look at the outside and forget to see the inside. But that's their problem, not yours. You're perfect exactly as you are." "Are you leaving?" The question hung in the air. Clara looked back at the doorway where Daniel stood, watching them. His expression was unreadable. Hope and fear and resignation all mixed together. "I don't want to," Clara said honestly, "but I need to talk to your daddy about grown-up things." "Okay?" Maya nodded, then did something that destroyed Clara completely. She held out one of her drawings, the one with 3 stick figures holding hands. "You promised we were us," Maya said. "You promised." Clara took the drawing with shaking hands. "I know, and I meant it." She stayed until Maya fell asleep, singing soft songs and stroking her hair. When she returned to the living room, Daniel had coffee waiting. A peace offering or a goodbye drink, Clara couldn't tell. "I can't watch her hurt like this," he said before Clara could speak. "Every time we try to bridge our worlds, she's the one who suffers. At the gallery, people treated her like she was an inconvenience, like she didn't belong, and she's 3. She doesn't have the armor to handle that yet." "So teach her," Clara's voice was fierce. "Teach her that she belongs everywhere, that other people's judgments don't define her worth. Don't protect her from the world by removing people who love her. Is that what I'm doing? Isn't it?" Clara leaned forward. "Daniel, life is hard for Maya, for you, for me. We can't control how people react, but we can control how we respond. And I want to respond by fighting. For us. For this." She held up Maya's drawing. "She promised we were us. I want to keep that promise. Even if it means choosing between your company and us? Because Patricia Chen made it pretty clear." "Fuck Patricia Chen." Daniel's eyebrows shot up. Clara never swore. "I'm serious. If she or anyone else has a problem with who I love, with the family I'm choosing, then they can invest elsewhere. I didn't build Whitfield Technologies to impress people like her. I built it to make the world more accessible, to fight for people who get left behind. If I can't fight for you and Maya, what's the point?" "Clara, no, let me finish." She moved closer, taking his hands. "I'm not saying it'll be easy. There will be more Patricias, more events where people judge, more moments where we feel like we don't fit. But I'd rather face all of that with you than face another perfectly polished, perfectly lonely event alone. Maya thinks she doesn't belong in my fancy life? Then maybe my life needs to be less fancy and more real. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. You'd really risk your company? Your reputation? For this? Yes. Clara squeezed his hands. I've spent 2 years building walls and proving I don't need anyone. And maybe I don't need anyone, but I want you, both of you, messy and complicated and worth every risk. Better than the man who builds playgrounds so kids like Maya have places to belong. Better than the father who called me at 2 a.m. because he needed support, not because he needed me to fix things. Better than someone who sees me as Clara, not CEO Clara. She shook her head. There is no better. There's just you. And I'm asking if that's enough. If we can figure out how to build a life that includes both our worlds, even when they don't fit perfectly. Daniel pulled her close suddenly, burying his face in her hair. I'm so scared of failing you both, of not being enough. Same, Clara whispered. But maybe we fail together. Maybe that's the point. They held each other in the dark living room while Maya slept down the hall and the world outside continued its judgment. It wasn't a perfect solution. The problems didn't disappear. But something had shifted, a decision made, a commitment cemented. They would try. They would fail sometimes. They would fight and struggle and face criticism from all sides. But they would do it together. What happens Monday? Daniel asked eventually. When you go back to work and face Patricia and the board and everyone who saw us Saturday? Monday, I tell them I'm in a relationship with you, that Maya is part of my life now, that anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. Clara pulled back to look at him. And maybe I start bringing you to meetings where your expertise actually matters. Stop performing Clara Whitfield, CEO, and start being just Clara, who happens to run a company. You make it sound simple. It won't be. But I'm tired of living 2 separate lives, of being one person at work and another person here. I want to integrate, to be whole. She smiled slightly. Also, Maya told me I need to bring you to her preschool for show and tell because you're really good at building, and apparently that's impressive to 3-year-olds. Daniel laughed, real and warm. She's been planning that for weeks. Then let's do it. Let's show up for her, both of us, in both our worlds. They talked until midnight, planning and problem-solving and acknowledging all the ways this could blow up in their faces. When Clara finally left, she carried Maya's drawing with her, a reminder of what they were fighting for. The next morning, Clara called an emergency meeting with her executive team. Jennifer, her CFO, her head of PR, and 3 board members assembled in the conference room with varying expressions of concern. I need to address something that's been brought to my attention, Clara began without preamble, regarding my personal life and how it affects the company. Clara, if this is about Saturday, her CFO started. It is. I brought my partner and his daughter to a company event. They experienced judgment and exclusion from investors and guests. And I need to be clear, that's unacceptable. She looked at each face around the table. I built this company on principles of accessibility and inclusion. If we're creating hostile environments for children with disabilities, if we're treating people as less than because they don't fit some polished standard, then we're hypocrites. And I won't tolerate it. Patricia Chen, who'd been invited to this meeting, leaned back in her chair. Clara, no one was hostile. We were simply surprised. You've kept your personal life very private. Suddenly, bringing a man and child to a major event, it raised questions. What questions? About your judgment. About whether this relationship is affecting your leadership, about, Patricia paused delicately, whether he's appropriate company for someone in your position. Clara felt rage, white-hot and clarifying. Appropriate company. Because he builds playgrounds instead of running hedge funds? Because his daughter has cerebral palsy? Or because you think I should only be seen with men who match some arbitrary standard of success? That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said. Clara's voice was steel. And here's what I'm saying. Daniel Ross is my partner. Maya is part of my life. They will attend company events when appropriate. And anyone, investor, board member, employee, who has a problem with that can leave. Because I won't build an empire on exclusion. That would make everything I've fought for meaningless. The room was silent. Jennifer looked like she wanted to applaud. The CFO appeared concerned. Patricia's expression had gone carefully neutral. "You're willing to risk investment over a relationship?" Patricia asked finally. "I'm willing to risk investment over my integrity. If you can't understand that, then your money comes with strings I don't want." Clara met her gaze steadily. Accessibility isn't a product feature. It's a value. And that extends to how we treat people in every aspect of this company, including who I choose to love. Patricia stood, gathering her things. "I'll need to reconsider my position as an investor. This isn't the direction I expected." "That's your choice." Clara didn't break eye contact. "The door's there." After Patricia left, the remaining executives exchanged glances. Clara braced for pushback, for concerns about alienating investors and damaging the company's reputation. Instead, Jennifer started clapping, slowly at first, then joined by others around the table. "That was the most badass thing I've ever seen," her head of PR said. "Also, can we make it company policy? The whole treat humans like humans thing?" "Already on it," Clara said, feeling something loosen in her chest. "And I want to start a partnership with Daniel's nonprofit, his Playground Designs. We should be funding them, supporting them, making accessibility for children a cornerstone of our mission." The meeting dissolved into planning. Not everyone was thrilled. Losing Patricia's investment would hurt short term, but the energy in the room had shifted. Clara felt it, the alignment between who she was and what she was building. She called Daniel as soon as the meeting ended. "How bad?" he asked immediately. "Lost an investor. Might lose more. Don't care." Clara was smiling. "Also, how would you feel about Whitfield Technologies funding your playground projects?" Silence. Then, "What?" "You heard me. We have a foundation budget. I want to direct it toward children's accessibility projects. Your designs are brilliant. They should be everywhere, not just where you can scrape together funding. Let me invest in what matters." "Clara, I can't let you do that because of... This isn't because we're together. This is because it's the right investment. Your work changes lives. Kids like Maya get to play alongside everyone else. That's exactly what my company should support." She paused. "Unless you don't want to work with me, keep business and personal separate? Are you kidding? You're offering to fund playground projects for kids with disabilities. That's been my dream for 5 years." His voice cracked slightly. "Yes. God, yes. When can we start?" "Tomorrow? Bring Maya. Let's design something together." "Tomorrow I have 3 other meetings." "Cancel them. This is important." He laughed. "Yes, ma'am." They spent the next 3 months building something new, not just Daniel's playgrounds, but a life that integrated both their worlds. Clara brought Daniel to board meetings where his perspective on accessibility added depth the executives had never considered. He brought her to site visits where she tested designs from a wheelchair user's perspective. Maya became a fixture at Whitfield Technologies, the staff learning to keep markers and paper on hand for when the boss's consultant needed to sketch ideas. It wasn't seamless. There were hard days when the press questioned Clara's judgment, when investors made pointed comments, when Maya had meltdowns that required Daniel to leave important meetings. There were arguments about money, Daniel's pride clashing with Clara's resources, and scheduling conflicts in moments where their different worlds seemed impossible to reconcile. But there were also breakthroughs. The first playground they designed together, funded by Whitfield Technologies, opened to a crowd of children who'd never had accessible play equipment in their neighborhood. Maya tested every element personally, declaring it perfect for kids like me. And slowly, carefully, Clara found herself healing in ways that had nothing to do with her legs. She started standing more, first with parallel bars that Daniel installed in his garage, then with his support, then with just a cane for short distances. Not because she had to, not to prove anything, but because she wanted to. Because she was done letting the accident define every choice, done hiding behind the safety of her wheelchair and her carefully controlled life. She was ready to take steps, literal and metaphorical, toward something new. The first playground opened on a Saturday morning in early spring, 6 months after Clara had stood up to Patricia Chen and chosen love over investment capital. The neighborhood was one Daniel had been trying to serve for 3 years. Predominantly low-income families, high population of children with various disabilities, and exactly 0 accessible play spaces within a 2-mile radius. Now there was this, a sprawling structure of ramps and platforms and adaptive swings, everything at multiple heights so children in wheelchairs could access the same spaces as their walking peers. Sensory-friendly zones for kids who needed quiet, textured pathways for visual impairment, and at the center, a castle, inspired by Maya's cardboard prototype, where dragons and princesses could coexist. Clara stood at the entrance beside Daniel and Maya, watching families pour in. A little boy in a wheelchair rolled up the main ramp, his mother crying behind him. 2 girls with Down syndrome tested the swings, squealing with delight. A teenager with cerebral palsy, more affected than Maya, navigated the space with a walker, his face transforming from skepticism to wonder. "You did this," Clara said quietly to Daniel. "We did this." He squeezed her hand. "I designed them. You made it possible. That's partnership." Maya tugged on Clara's sleeve. "Can I show everyone the Dragon Cave? The one I designed?" The Dragon Cave was a covered space with soft lighting and cushioned walls, perfect for children who needed sensory breaks. Maya had insisted on it, drawing elaborate plans that Clara's engineers had somehow translated into reality. "Go ahead, Bug," Daniel said. "You're the lead designer on this project." Maya took off running, her gait still slightly uneven, but confident, toward a cluster of kids examining the cave entrance. Within seconds, she was explaining features with the authority of someone who'd lived the need for these spaces. "She's incredible," Clara murmured, watching the little girl who'd become central to her entire world. She learned from the best. Daniel pulled Clara closer. "You taught her that being different is powerful, that she belongs everywhere. 6 months ago, she was having nightmares about that gallery. Now she's teaching other kids about accessible design." "She taught me just as much." Clara leaned into him, letting herself relax into the embrace. In public. With press photographers circulating, she'd stopped caring about optics months ago. "I spent 2 years telling myself I'd healed, but I was just hiding. Maya showed me the difference." A reporter approached, the 3rd one that morning. Clara had learned to handle them, turning every interview into education about accessibility rather than human interest fluff about the inspirational CEO. "Ms. Whitfield, this playground represents a significant investment from Whitfield Technologies. Some shareholders have questioned whether this aligns with your company's core mission. How do you respond?" Clara smiled, the one that made board members nervous. "Our core mission is making the world accessible. This playground embodies that more than any autonomous vehicle feature. Children with disabilities deserve spaces designed for them, not adapted as afterthoughts. If shareholders can't see the value in that, they're welcome to invest elsewhere. We've had no shortage of interest from people who actually understand our values." It was true. After Patricia Chen pulled her investment, 3 other firms had approached Clara, all specifically citing her stance on inclusion as their reason for interest. Whitfield Technologies' stock had actually risen following the controversy. Turned out authenticity played well in the market. The reporter scribbled notes. "And your relationship with Daniel Ross, the playground designer, how has that influenced the company's direction?" "Daniel hasn't influenced the company's direction. He's helped clarify it. Accessibility isn't abstract when you're in love with someone who fights for it every day, when you watch a 3-year-old navigate a world that wasn't built for her needs." Clara felt Daniel's hand tighten around hers. "He reminds me why this work matters, why we can't just meet minimum standards, why we have to keep pushing for better." After the reporter left, Daniel pulled Clara aside, away from the crowds. "You know that was going in the article, right? The in love with part?" "Good. I meant it." Clara looked up at him, this man who'd become her entire heart. "Unless you're not ready for that to be public knowledge." "Are you kidding? I want to shout it from every playground structure we build." He kissed her, quick and firm. "I love you, and I'm proud that everyone knows it." They were interrupted by Maya's shriek of delight. She came running with another little girl in tow, also using a wheelchair, probably 6 or 7 years old. "This is Emma," Maya announced. "She has a cool chair too. Emma, this is Princess Clara. She designs technology, and she's my dad's girlfriend, and she's teaching me about engineering." Emma's eyes went wide, looking between Clara's wheelchair and Maya's obvious adoration. "You're like me?" "I am," Clara confirmed, rolling down to Emma's eye level. "Cool Chairs Club. We're pretty exclusive." "My mom says I can't do lots of things because of my chair." Emma's voice was small, uncertain. Clara felt the familiar rage at all the low expectations, all the ways the world tried to diminish children like Emma and Maya. "Your mom's wrong. You can do different things, and you might do them differently, but the only limits are the ones we accept. You know what I do?" "What?" "I run a technology company worth almost $1 billion. I design features that help people like us navigate the world, and I date that guy over there," she pointed at Daniel, "who builds amazing playgrounds, all from this chair." Emma's face transformed. "Really?" "Really. And you know what Maya's going to do when she grows up?" "What?" "Anything she wants, because she's brilliant and fierce and doesn't let anyone tell her she can't." Clara held out her hand to Emma. "Want to test this playground with us? Make sure we designed it right?" They spent the next hour getting feedback from Emma and a dozen other children, Clara taking notes while Daniel made mental adjustments for future projects. Maya appointed herself tour guide, showing off features with proprietary pride. By the time families started leaving, the three of them were exhausted and happy. "Ice cream?" Daniel suggested. "I think the lead design team earned it." They piled into Daniel's truck. He'd finally let Clara buy him a newer model with a proper wheelchair lift, and drove to their favorite local shop. Maya got her usual chocolate with rainbow sprinkles. Daniel got coffee. Clara got vanilla, which Maya still insisted was boring but pretty like you. "I have something to tell you both," Daniel said once they were settled at a corner table, his voice nervous enough that Clara's heart jumped. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, at least I hope nothing's wrong." He took a breath. "I got a call yesterday from the city. They want to hire me full-time, director of accessible recreation for the entire parks department, overseeing playground design across all neighborhoods. Real salary, benefits, budget to do this work properly." Clara felt joy burst through her chest. "Daniel, that's incredible. It means I'd have to close my freelance business, stop taking private commissions, be an employee instead of my own boss." He was watching her carefully. "And it means I could actually contribute equally. To bills, to expenses, to everything I've been letting you cover because I'm too proud to admit I can't afford my half." "I don't care about that. I do." His voice was firm. "I care that I can't take you to nice restaurants. That when Maya needed new leg braces last month, you paid for them before I could even process the cost. That you bought my truck because mine was dying and I was too broke to replace it. I love you, but I hate feeling like a charity case." Clara reached across the table, taking both his hands. "You're not a charity case. You're my partner. What's mine is yours. That's not partnership, that's dependence." He pulled one hand free to run it through his hair. "I need this, Clara. Not just the job, but the ability to stand on my own, to provide for my daughter, to know that I'm with you because we're choosing each other, not because you're rescuing me." The words stung, even though Clara understood them. She'd felt the same way after her accident, the horror of depending on others, the need to prove she was capable. Of course, Daniel felt it too. "Then take the job," she said quietly. "If that's what you need, take it." "But Daniel, you've never been someone I needed to rescue. You rescued me. From loneliness, from thinking love wasn't possible, from hiding behind my success because I was afraid to be vulnerable." "We rescued each other," he corrected. "And now I want to build something equal, where we both contribute, where Maya sees her father as capable and strong, not struggling. She already sees that. I want to see it too." They left the ice cream shop with the news still settling. Clara was happy for Daniel, truly happy, but she couldn't shake a small, selfish fear that everything was about to change, that the dynamic they'd built, however imperfect, would shift into something unknown. Her fears seemed realized when Daniel started the new job 3 weeks later. Suddenly, he had meetings during their usual lunchtimes, evening deadlines that meant canceled dinners, weekend work when playgrounds needed emergency repairs. The chaotic, flexible schedule that had allowed them to build their relationship around Maya's needs became rigid and demanding. "I miss you," Clara said one Thursday night, 3 weeks into Daniel's new position. They were on the phone. She at her penthouse, he at his house, Maya already asleep. We used to see each other every day. Now I feel like we're scheduling appointments. I know, I'm sorry. This new job, there's so much to catch up on. Years of neglected maintenance, outdated designs, budget fights with bureaucrats who don't understand why accessibility costs more. His exhaustion bled through the phone. I'm doing important work, but I feel like I'm failing you and Maya in the process. You're not failing anyone. Maya asked tonight why you don't come for dinner anymore. I told her you're busy with your company, but the truth is, I'm the one who's too busy now, who can't make it work. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. We'll figure it out, adjust to the new schedule. This is just a transition period. What if it's not? Daniel's voice dropped. What if this is just who we are now? Two busy people who love each other but can't find time to actually be together. My ex-wife left for less. She said I was always working, never present, that she was tired of fighting for my attention. I'm not your ex-wife. No, you're better, which is why I can't let myself do the same thing to you that I did to her. He sighed. Maybe we need to take a step back. Figure out if this actually works when we're both committed to demanding careers. The words felt like a gut punch. Are you breaking up with me? No, God, no. I'm just saying maybe we've been living in a bubble, playing house on borrowed time. And now that reality's intruding, we need to be honest about whether we can sustain this. They ended the call without resolution. Clara sitting in her empty penthouse feeling the loneliness creep back in. She'd been so certain that they could build something lasting. But maybe Daniel was right. Maybe love wasn't enough when two full lives collided. The doubt festered over the following weeks. They saw each other in snatches, quick lunches, brief phone calls, one dinner where they were both so exhausted they barely talked. Maya became clingy and emotional, acting out in ways she hadn't since before Clara entered their lives. She's regressing, Daniel told Clara one Saturday afternoon when she finally managed to visit. Maya was having a meltdown in her room, refusing to see Clara because you don't come anymore anyway. Let me talk to her, Clara said. She specifically asked for you not to. Said she doesn't want to get attached when you're going to leave like Mommy did. The comparison was devastating. I'm not leaving. Aren't you? Daniel's eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion. When was the last time you stayed over? When did we last spend a full day together? You're pulling away. I can feel it. Because you're never available. Clara hated how her voice pitched high and defensive. Every time I suggest plans, you have meetings or deadlines or emergency repairs. You said you wanted equal partnership, but what you actually wanted was to be too busy to need me. That's not fair, isn't it? You took this job to prove you don't need my money. But in the process, you've decided you don't need me at all, and now Maya's paying the price because both of us are too stubborn to admit this isn't working. The silence that followed was thick with hurt and truth. They'd been dancing around the problem for weeks, each blaming the other, neither willing to face the real issue. They didn't know how to be together when life got complicated. What do you want me to do? Daniel asked finally. Quit the job? Go back to barely making ends meet so I have more free time? I want you to want to see me. Clara's voice broke. I want to feel like I'm a priority, not an obligation you squeeze in when work allows. I want Maya to stop thinking I'm abandoning her. And I want you to stop punishing yourself for needing help. I don't need help. Yes, you do. We all do. That's what partnership means. But you're so determined to prove you're independent that you're destroying the only relationship that's ever made you feel less alone. She was crying now, not caring who saw. You told me you loved me, that you wanted to build a life together. But the second things got hard, you're looking for exits, just like you accused me of doing. Daniel sank onto the couch, head in his hands. I'm terrified, he admitted. This job was supposed to fix everything. Give me stability, respectability, the ability to provide for Maya without depending on anyone. Instead, I'm more stressed than ever. I'm failing as a father, and I'm losing you, and I don't know how to fix it. Clara rolled over to him, taking his face in her hands. You don't have to fix it alone. That's the whole point. We fix it together. We adjust schedules. We ask for help from each other, from your mom, from my assistant who's been offering to babysit Maya for months. We stop keeping score of who contributes what and just build something that works for all three of us. What if I can't do it? His vulnerability was raw, unfiltered. What if I'm not capable of balancing career and fatherhood and being the partner you deserve? Then we fail together and figure out plan B. But Daniel, you don't get to quit on us before we've really tried. Maya deserves better. I deserve better. And so do you. He pulled her close, burying his face in her neck. They stayed like that until Maya's crying quieted, until the sun shifted through the windows and painted everything gold. When they finally pulled apart, something had shifted. Not solved, but acknowledged. The problem wasn't that they couldn't make it work. The problem was they'd stopped trying. "Can I talk to Maya?" Clara asked. Daniel nodded, looking exhausted but relieved. Clara rolled to Maya's door, knocking gently. "Go away," came the muffled response. "It's Clara. Can I come in?" Silence. Then, quietly, "Okay." Maya was curled on her bed, face blotchy from crying, holding the drawing of their family like a talisman. She looked so small and heartbroken that Clara felt her chest crack open. "I'm sorry," Clara said immediately. "I'm sorry I haven't been here. I'm sorry you thought I was leaving, and I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't important to me." "Daddy said you're both really busy." Maya's voice was tiny. "Too busy for me." "That's not true. We're busy, yes. But you're the most important thing. To both of us. And we forgot that for a little while. We got caught up in work and stress and grown-up problems. But that's our mistake, not yours. Are you going to leave like Mommy?" Clara felt tears stream down her face. "No, baby. I'm not going anywhere. I love you. I love your daddy. And I'm going to do better about showing up, about being here even when life gets hard. Okay?" Maya studied her with 3-year-old intensity. "Promise?" "I promise. And you know what? When I make promises, I keep them. Remember when I promised we'd finish the cardboard castle? We did it. When I promised to come to your show and tell, I was there. I promise I'm staying. Even when I'm bad? You're not bad. You're hurt and scared and acting out because those are big feelings. But you're never bad. You're perfect exactly as you are." Maya launched herself at Clara, nearly knocking her out of the wheelchair with the force of her hug. Clara held her tight, this child who'd become her daughter in all but paperwork, and made silent promises to do better. To show up. To fight for this family they were building. When Daniel appeared in the doorway, looking uncertain, Clara held out one arm. He joined the embrace, the three of them holding each other like survivors of a storm finally reaching shore. "We need to talk," Clara said once Maya had calmed down. "All three of us. About how we make this work. What we need from each other. What we can compromise on and what we can't." They spent the rest of the afternoon doing exactly that. Maya, with the brutal honesty of childhood, explained that she needed Clara to come for dinner at least twice a week and do weekend activities together. Daniel admitted he'd been overcommitting at work, trying to prove himself to new bosses, and needed to set better boundaries. Clara confessed she'd been pulling away because feeling needed scared her, reminded her too much of post-accident dependence. "So we're all a little broken," Daniel summarized when they'd laid everything out. "A lot broken," Clara corrected. "But maybe we can be broken together. Make something whole from all our pieces." "That's very poetic," Maya observed. "Can we have pizza now? Talking about feelings makes me hungry." They ordered pizza. Maya's request for breakfast pizza with eggs and bacon, somehow honored by a restaurant that clearly recognized the Ross family's standing order. While they waited, Daniel pulled up his work calendar. "Okay, real talk. I have Tuesday and Thursday evening meetings that I can't move. Wednesday I'm usually on site until 6, but Mondays and Fridays I'm in the office and can leave by 5. Weekends I'm on call for emergencies, but that's maybe once a month." Clara pulled up her own calendar. "Board meetings are Tuesday mornings. Wednesday I host investor calls that run late, but I can block out Monday and Friday evenings. Thursday I could do lunch? I can't do Thursday lunch. That's when Maya has therapy. Can I come to therapy?" Clara asked. If Maya is comfortable with it, I'd like to understand better how to support her. Maya, who'd been listening while coloring, looked up. "You want to come to therapy?" "If you'll let me, it's part of your life." I want to be part of all of it, not just the easy parts. Maya considered this with her usual gravity. Okay, but you have to sit on the floor, that's the rule. Everyone sits on the floor at therapy. Deal. They built a schedule that was imperfect but possible. 2 family dinners a week, 1 weekend day together, Thursday therapy sessions, and a new rule, emergencies aside, work stopped at Maya's bedtime. No emails, no calls, just presence. This means I need to hire another assistant, Claire said. Someone to handle after-hours issues so I'm not constantly on call. And I need to delegate better. Stop trying to personally oversee every playground inspection. Daniel ran his hand through his hair. My boss keeps telling me to trust the team. Maybe I should actually try that. And I need both of you to not treat me like a baby, Maya added. I'm almost 4, that's basically grown up. Absolutely ancient, Clara agreed seriously. Practically decrepit. Maya giggled, the sound like medicine for all the hurt of the past weeks. They ate pizza on the living room floor, mapping out the next month's schedule, finding gaps and overlaps, making compromises. It wasn't perfect. They'd still have conflicts and missed connections and days when work demanded more than they wanted to give. But they were trying, together, as a family. That's when the blog post hit. Clara didn't see it at first. She'd learned to ignore most internet commentary about her life. But Sunday morning, her phone started exploding with messages from concerned friends and colleagues. She finally clicked on a link Jennifer sent with a simple warning, prepare yourself. The blog was called Accessibility Advocate or Fraud, a hit piece written by someone with an axe to grind and apparently unlimited time for stalking. It featured photos from the gallery event months ago, zoomed-in shots that captured Clara standing briefly with Daniel's support. More photos from the playground opening, Clara on her feet for the ribbon cutting. Video clips from therapy sessions that Maya's treatment center must have leaked, showing Clara working on standing and walking with assistance. The headline screamed, Tech CEO Clara Whitfield accused of faking disability, relationship with playground designer raises questions about authenticity. The post was vicious. It claimed Clara had exaggerated her injuries for sympathy, that she used her wheelchair for attention while being fully capable of walking, that her relationship with Daniel was a PR stunt to seem more relatable, that every accessibility feature she'd championed was performative rather than necessary. Worse, it included photos of Maya, clearly taken without permission, with speculation about whether Clara was using the child with cerebral palsy as a prop to legitimize her advocacy. Clara felt physically ill reading it, not because the accusations about her hurt, though they did, cutting deep into every insecurity she'd fought to overcome, but because they dragged Maya into this, exposed a child, questioned her disability, her father's motives, their entire family's authenticity. Her phone rang. Daniel. Tell me you haven't seen it, he said immediately. I've seen it. Clara, I'm so sorry. I don't know who took those photos of Maya. Her therapy center is investigating, but this isn't your fault. Clara's voice was shaking. This is someone who wants to hurt me and doesn't care who else gets damaged in the process. They're calling Maya a prop, saying I'm using her disability to get close to you for your money. Daniel's rage bled through the phone. They posted photos of my house, Clara. My address is in the comments. People are showing up to take pictures, yelling questions about whether Maya's really disabled or if we're both faking. Oh my God. I've called the police. They say without direct threats, there's not much they can do. I'm keeping Maya inside, but she's scared. She doesn't understand why strangers are taking pictures, why people are saying mean things about us. Claire's mind raced. Pack a bag, both of you. Come to my place. Now. I have security. No one can get to you there. Clara, don't argue. This is my fault. My public life, my spotlight. I'm not letting you and Maya stay somewhere you're not safe. Pack. I'm sending my driver. We can't just move in with you. Why not? The question hung in the air. We've been dancing around this for months, pretending we're not building toward a life together because we're both scared. But I love you. I love Maya. And I will burn down whoever wrote this post, but first I need to know you're both safe. So pack a damn bag, Daniel, and let me protect my family. Silence. Then quietly. Okay. We'll come. Clara spent the next 3 hours preparing. Her penthouse had 3 bedrooms, One she used as an office, one guest room that had never been occupied. She converted the office into Maya's room in record time, ordering furniture that could be delivered and assembled same day. Disability-friendly fixtures in the bathroom, art supplies, a nightlight, everything a 3-year-old might need to feel safe in an unfamiliar space. By the time Daniel and Maya arrived, Clara had also contacted her lawyer about cease and desist orders, her PR team about response strategies, and a private investigator about finding the blog's author. She was in full CEO mode, commanding, decisive, ruthless. But when Maya walked in clutching her stuffed bear and looking terrified, Clara softened completely. "Hey, Princess, welcome to the castle. Is this where you live?" Maya looked around the expansive space with wide eyes. "It's so big." "It is, and kind of lonely, honestly. I'm glad you're here." Clara led them down the hall. "Want to see your room? I tried to make it perfect for you." What she'd created in 3 hours was a child's dream. Soft purple walls, courtesy of very expensive rush painting, a bed shaped like a castle tower, a corner filled with adaptive toys and art supplies. Maya's face transformed from fear to wonder. "This is mine? All yours, for as long as you need it." Maya ran to explore every corner while Daniel stood in the doorway, looking overwhelmed. When she was distracted, he pulled Clara aside. "You didn't have to do all this." "Yes, I did." "She's scared. This is supposed to feel safe." Clara took his hands. "And I meant what I said. This isn't temporary unless you want it to be. I have the space. You're being harassed at your house. Stay here. Let things calm down. Let me help." "By things calm down, you mean?" "I mean I'm going to destroy whoever did this, legally, professionally, and publicly." Her expression was steel. "No one attacks my family without consequences." The word family hung between them, the first time Clara had said it out loud. Daniel pulled her into a kiss that was desperate and grateful and terrified all at once. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "And I'm sorry. This is all because of me. This is because someone is cruel and vindictive. Not because of you, not because of Maya. Because humans can be awful, and this one chose us as targets." She pulled back to meet his eyes. "But they made one mistake. They assumed I'd back down, protect my image, choose my career over you. Won't you have to? If this gets worse, let it get worse. I'll address it publicly. Tell the truth, all of it. About my recovery, about you, about why I advocate for accessibility. And if people can't handle complexity, if they need me to be either fully disabled or fully healed, completely independent or completely dependent, then they don't understand the actual human experience of disability." She called an emergency press conference for Monday morning. Her PR team advised against it, suggested waiting for the story to die down, issuing a brief written statement, maintaining distance from the controversy. Clara ignored them all. Monday morning, she stood, using her cane for support, Daniel beside her, Maya holding her other hand, in front of a crowd of journalists and cameras. Behind them, a screen displayed medical records, therapy notes, and doctor's statements that Clara had gotten permission to release. "My name is Clara Whitfield," she began, voice clear and steady. 2.5 years ago, I was in a car accident that resulted in incomplete spinal cord injury. I use a wheelchair for mobility and independence. I also do physical therapy that has allowed me to stand and walk short distances with assistance. Both of these things are true. Both are part of my reality." She clicked to the next slide, a scan of her spine, the damage clearly visible even to untrained eyes. Disability isn't binary. Recovery isn't linear. Some days I can stand for 20 minutes. Other days I can barely transfer from my chair. This doesn't make me a fraud. It makes me human. She paused, letting that sink in. The blog post that's been circulating questions my authenticity as a disability advocate, claims I've exaggerated my injuries, uses photos of me standing as evidence that I'm lying about needing my wheelchair. Another click. Photos of her at various events, some in her chair, some standing, some in obvious pain. This is ableism. The belief that disability has to look one specific way to be legitimate, that anyone who can stand doesn't deserve accommodation, that using mobility aids is giving up rather than gaining independence. It's harmful. It's wrong. And it needs to stop. She felt Daniel's hand on her shoulder, grounding her. The post also attacks Daniel Ross and his daughter Maya, suggesting they're using disability for attention or financial gain. Let me be absolutely clear. Daniel builds playgrounds for children with disabilities because his daughter has cerebral palsy and he wants her to have spaces where she belongs. He took a job with the city, making a fraction of what he could make in private sector because he believes in accessible recreation. He's in a relationship with me because we fell in love. Complicated, imperfect, real love. Maya squeezed Clara's hand. Several journalists were already typing frantically. And Maya is 3 years old. She's a child. She has cerebral palsy. She works incredibly hard in therapy to build strength and coordination. And she deserves privacy and protection, not to be photographed without consent and used as ammunition in attacks against her father and the woman who loves her. Clara's voice hardened, the CEO showing through. I've filed multiple legal actions against the blog's author: defamation, invasion of privacy, harassment, and dissemination of illegally obtained medical records. I will pursue these to the fullest extent of the law. I will also be working with legislators to strengthen protections around disability privacy and prevent this kind of attack from happening to others. She looked directly into the cameras. To everyone watching who uses a wheelchair sometimes and walks sometimes, who has invisible disabilities or fluctuating conditions, who doesn't fit neat categories, you're valid. You're not faking. You don't owe anyone your medical history or justification for your accommodations. And anyone who questions your legitimacy is wrong. The press conference dissolved into questions. Clara answered them all with unflinching honesty about her recovery timeline, her relationship with Daniel, Maya's diagnosis, why she chose to go public rather than staying silent. By the time it ended, she was exhausted but resolute. The response was immediate and polarized. Half the internet rallied behind Clara. Disability advocates praising her transparency, fellow wheelchair users sharing their own stories of fluctuating ability, thousands of comments about the harmful nature of disability gatekeeping. The other half doubled down. Conspiracy theorists convinced this was elaborate damage control, critics claiming she was exploiting Maya for sympathy, trolls posting increasingly vicious attacks. But something unexpected happened too. Other public figures started sharing their stories. A famous actor admitted using mobility aids off camera while walking short distances for roles. An Olympic athlete talked about her chronic pain condition that flared unpredictably. A comedian went viral with a routine about being not disabled enough for some people while being too disabled for others. The conversation shifted from, "Is Clara Whitfield lying?" to, "Why do we police disability authenticity?" And in the middle of the media storm, life continued. Maya started preschool at a new location closer to Clara's penthouse, one with full accessibility and a teacher trained in adaptive education. Daniel navigated his new job while learning to live in a space that was Clara's, but becoming theirs. Clara ran her company while fielding interview requests and speaking opportunities about disability representation. They had family dinners on Mondays and Fridays, Maya's therapy on Thursdays, now with Clara in attendance, sitting on the floor per regulation. Weekend mornings at playgrounds Daniel designed, evenings curled on the couch watching movies, Maya between them. It wasn't perfect. The blog's author remained anonymous despite the private investigators' efforts. Trolls continued harassing them online. Daniel still struggled with feeling dependent, now living in Clara's home instead of his own. Maya had nightmares about cameras and strangers, but they were together, building something real from all their broken pieces. And somewhere in the chaos of public scrutiny and private healing, Clara realized something. She was happy. Messily, complicatedly, imperfectly happy. The kind that came from choosing love even when it was hard, from showing up even when it was inconvenient, from letting people see the parts of herself she'd spent years hiding. She was done performing, done pretending, done with careful control. She was just Clara, wheelchair user, CEO, girlfriend, almost mother to a 3-year-old who called her princess and believed she could do anything. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. 3 months after the press conference, Clara stood in her physical therapist's office, staring at a set of parallel bars that had become both her greatest enemy and her most stubborn challenge. Daniel sat in the corner with Maya, who was coloring a picture she'd declared was Daddy and Princess Clara getting married, which had become her latest obsession, despite no actual proposal having occurred. You've been avoiding this, Dr. Sarah Chen observed, arms crossed. She'd been Clara's therapist since the accident, one of the few people allowed to call out Clara's avoidance tactics without consequence. I haven't been avoiding. I've been busy. Running a company, dealing with legal proceedings, integrating a family into my life. Excuses. Sarah moved to stand beside the bars. You've plateaued because you're scared. We both know you're capable of more progress. The question is whether you're brave enough to try. Clara felt Daniel's eyes on her from across the room. They'd been living together for 3 months now, and he'd learned to read her moods with uncomfortable accuracy. He knew she was terrified. Knew that every step she took felt like tempting fate. What if she fell? What if she pushed too hard and lost what mobility she'd regained? What if trying to be more than she was resulted in becoming less? What's the worst that could happen? Sarah pressed. I fall. I hurt myself. I end up with less function than I have now. Clara's voice was sharp with fear disguised as irritation. And the best? Clara didn't answer, couldn't articulate the hope that lived in her chest like a fragile bird, the dream of walking down an aisle without assistance, of chasing Maya through a playground, of standing eye to eye with Daniel without looking up. Princess Clara's scared, Maya observed from her coloring corner with the brutal honesty of 4-year-olds. She'd had a birthday the month before, celebrated with a party at the penthouse that had featured 17 preschoolers and enough cake to feed a small army. I'm not scared, Clara said automatically. You look like when I'm scared of the dark. Daddy says being scared is okay. You just have to be brave anyway. Out of the mouths of babes. Daniel's smile was soft with pride for his daughter and sympathy for Clara's struggle. She's right, he said quietly. Being scared is okay, but watching you avoid this because you're afraid of failing, that's not the Clara who stood in front of 100 reporters and defended our family. That's not the woman who told off Patricia Chen and risked her company for us. That's someone I don't recognize. The words stung precisely because they were true. Clara had built an empire on taking risks, on pushing boundaries, on refusing to accept limitations. But somewhere in the chaos of the past year, she'd started protecting herself, started choosing safety over possibility. What if I can't do it? She whispered. Then you can't, and we love you anyway. Daniel stood, crossing to where she sat in her wheelchair near the bars. He knelt so they were eye level. But what if you can? What if you're capable of more than you're allowing yourself to imagine? Don't you want to know? Clara looked at the bars, looked at Sarah's patient expression, at Maya, who'd abandoned her coloring to watch with wide, expectant eyes, at Daniel, who believed in her capacity for bravery even when she'd forgotten it existed. Okay, she said, voice barely audible. Let's try. The next hour was brutal. Sarah pushed Clara further than she'd been pushed in months, standing longer, stepping farther, bearing more weight on legs that trembled with effort and forgotten strength. Maya cheered every small victory. Daniel spotted from behind in case she fell, and Clara cried through most of it, from pain, from frustration, from the strange alchemy of hope and terror. 2 full steps unassisted, Sarah announced when they finally stopped. That's progress, Clara. Real, measurable progress. 2 steps didn't sound like much. 2 steps was nothing compared to the marathon runners Clara saw in the park, the dancers she'd once been, the woman she'd been before the accident. But 2 steps was also everything. 2 steps was possibility. 2 steps was proof that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't done healing. Again tomorrow? Sarah asked. Clara nodded, too exhausted and emotional to speak. They left the therapy center with Maya chattering about how strong Princess Clara was, how she'd taken 1,000,000 steps, how Daddy needed to give her extra ice cream for being so brave. Daniel pushed Clara's wheelchair through the parking garage, his hand occasionally squeezing her shoulder in silent support. I'm proud of you, he said once they were in the car. Maya buckled in her seat and already nodding off from the excitement. For taking 2 steps? I used to run half marathons. For trying. For being scared and doing it anyway. For letting us see you struggle instead of pretending you're fine. He reached over, taking her hand. You're always so strong for everyone else. It's okay to let us be strong for you sometimes. Clara felt tears threaten again. She'd cried more in the past year than in the entire 2 years before, but these tears felt different, cleaner, somehow, like releasing pressure that had been building too long. "I want to walk," she admitted quietly. "Not because I need to prove anything, not to be fixed or whole, but because I remember what it felt like. The freedom. And I miss it. Then we'll help you get there. However long it takes, whatever it looks like. Sarah, me, Maya, we're all on your team." That became their rhythm. 3 times a week at therapy, Daniel and Maya in attendance more often than not. Maya appointed herself the official cheerleader, creating elaborate posters that proclaimed things like "Princess Clara is the strongest" and "Walking is hard, but you can do it." Daniel became Clara's training partner, researching exercises and techniques, celebrating every millimeter of progress. And slowly, painfully, Clara got stronger. 2 steps became 4. Standing for 5 minutes became 15. Walking with a walker became walking with a cane became, months later, on a random Tuesday that felt like any other day, walking 10 feet completely unassisted. Clara collapsed into Daniel's arms at the end of those 10 feet, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. Sarah was cheering, Maya was screaming with delight, and Daniel was whispering, "I knew you could, I knew you could, I knew you could," like a prayer into Clara's hair. "I did it," Clara gasped. "I actually did it." "You did it," Daniel confirmed, pulling back to look at her face. His own cheeks were wet. "You incredible, stubborn, amazing woman. You did it." But even as they celebrated, Clara knew the truth. This wasn't a cure. She'd still use her wheelchair most of the time. It was faster, less exhausting, more practical for her life. She'd still have bad days when standing was impossible, when pain flared, when her body reminded her that healing wasn't linear. The 10 feet she'd walked didn't erase her disability or make her normal. What it did was give her options, give her choice, give her the ability to decide how she moved through the world rather than having that decision made by her injury. That night, after Maya was asleep, Clara and Daniel sat on the penthouse balcony overlooking the city. The lights sparkled below them like grounded stars. Daniel had his arm around Clara's shoulders, her head resting against his chest, the night air cool and perfect. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said quietly. "Always. Why haven't we talked about making this permanent? We've been living together for 6 months. Maya calls you Mama Clara now when she thinks we're not listening. We're raising her together, building a life together. But we've never actually discussed what that means. Whether this is temporary until things calm down or..." He trailed off, and Clara felt her heart race. They'd been dancing around this conversation for months, both too scared to name what they were building. "Or whether this is forever," Clara finished. "Yeah, that." She sat up, turning to face him. "Daniel Ross, are you asking me to marry you?" "I don't know. Maybe. I don't have a ring. I didn't plan this. I just..." He ran his hand through his hair, nervous in a way that was endearing. "I know that I love you. I know Maya loves you. I know that every morning I wake up grateful you're here, and every night I fall asleep hoping you'll still be here tomorrow. And I know that when I imagine the future, 5 years, 10 years, the rest of my life, you're in every picture. So yeah, maybe I am asking if you'd want that, if you could see yourself married to a guy who still can't figure out how to work your espresso machine and whose daughter has decided our wedding should involve a dragon." Clara felt laughter bubble up through tears. "A dragon?" "She's very insistent, says all good weddings need a dragon. I tried to explain that's not traditional, but she cited the cardboard castle as precedent. She's not wrong. The dragon was an important architectural element. So is that a yes?" Clara looked at this man who'd asked her to dance when she thought she'd never dance again, who'd held her through panic attacks and celebrated 2-step victories, who'd stood beside her through media storms and public scrutiny, who'd trusted her with his daughter's heart and his own. "Ask me properly," she said. Daniel slid off the couch onto one knee in front of her wheelchair, taking both her hands. The city lights behind him created a halo effect that was either divine intervention or excellent cinematography by the universe. "Claire Whitfield, I don't have a speech prepared. I'm not good with fancy words, but I know that my life before you was smaller, lonelier, less full of laughter and possibility, and someone who believes I'm capable of more than I think I am. You've made Maya's life bigger too, shown her that disability doesn't mean limitation, that different can be powerful, that family is what you build, not just what you're born into. So I'm asking, badly, without a ring or proper planning, will you marry me? Will you be Maya's mother and my wife and let us spend the rest of our lives trying to deserve you? Clara was crying again, seeming to be her permanent state these days. Yes. God, yes. Obviously, yes. Daniel stood, pulled her up with him so they were both standing, her hands in his for balance, and kissed her like he was trying to memorize the moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he kept his arms around her waist for support. We should tell Maya, Clara said. It's midnight. She's asleep. She's going to be furious if we make her wait until morning for this news. They were right. They woke Maya gently, and she sat up in her castle bed looking confused and grumpy until Daniel said, Princess Clara said yes. Maya's face transformed. Yes to what? To marrying Daddy, Clara explained, sitting on the edge of the bed. To being a family. Officially. Legally. Forever. With a dragon? Maya shrieked at a volume that would probably wake the neighbors, but Clara couldn't bring herself to care. With whatever you want, Clara promised. Maya launched herself at them, and they all tumbled into a tangle of arms and legs and tears and laughter. This was her family now, messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. The wedding planning was chaos. Maya had opinions about everything. The dragon requirement stood firm, along with demands for a purple dress, a castle cake, and flowers that smelled like happiness. Clara's mother, who'd been skeptically watching this relationship develop, flew in from Florida and immediately fell in love with Maya. Daniel's mother cried when they told her, pulling Clara into a hug and whispering, "Thank you for giving them back themselves." The press, of course, had a field day. Wheelchair CEO to marry playground designer in fairytale wedding, read one headline. Clara Whitfield finds love after disability advocacy controversy, read another. Clara ignored most of it, but granted one interview to a disability-focused publication where she talked honestly about love, access, and building families that look different than tradition. People keep calling this a fairy tale, the interviewer observed. Do you see it that way? Clara thought about the question carefully. Fairy tales are perfect. This isn't perfect. We've struggled with money and schedules and public scrutiny. We've had fights about how to raise Maya, about balancing careers, about whose turn it is to do dishes. Daniel has bad days when he's exhausted and short-tempered. I have bad days when my body doesn't cooperate, and I'm frustrated with everything. Maya has meltdowns and developmental challenges, and sometimes says hurtful things she doesn't mean. She paused, looking at where Daniel and Maya were examining wedding venues through a window. But it's real. It's honest. We chose each other knowing all the complicated parts. That's not a fairy tale. That's better. That's sustainable. The venue search proved predictably difficult. Most wedding locations weren't as accessible as they claimed. Stairs to entrances, narrow bathrooms, seating that didn't accommodate wheelchairs. Claire was ready to just rent out a park when Maya announced she knew the perfect place. The playground! The first one we built! With the castle. It was unconventional. It was completely Maya. And when Clara rolled through the accessible playground they'd designed together, the one that had started their public partnership, the one where children of all abilities played side by side, she knew it was perfect. They planned for late spring when the weather would be reliable and the flowers would be blooming. Maya threw herself into preparation with the focus of a tiny wedding planner, creating detailed drawings of how everything should look. The dragon, it turned out, would be a sculpture Daniel designed and built, a friendly-looking creature with flowers woven through its spikes, positioned near the ceremony arch. Because dragons are misunderstood, Maya explained seriously. People think they're scary, but they're actually nice. Like how people thought Princess Clara couldn't do things, but she can do everything. Clara had to walk away before she started crying in front of the 4-year-old who'd somehow become the wisest person she knew. The legal proceedings against the blog finally concluded 2 weeks before the wedding. The author, a former Whitfield Technologies employee Clara had fired for ethical violations, was found guilty of defamation, harassment, and illegal distribution of medical records. The settlement was substantial, all of which Clara donated to disability advocacy organizations. Do you feel better? Daniel asked the night the verdict came through. Now that it's over? I feel, Clara searched for the word, vindicated, but also sad. This person was so angry, so determined to hurt me that they invaded our privacy and attacked a child. That doesn't go away just because a judge ruled in our favor. But it's over. We can move forward. We were already moving forward, Clara pointed out. This was just closing a door on something that tried to stop us. The important part, the building a life together part, that never stopped. Daniel pulled her close. They were sitting in what had become their ritual spot on the balcony, the city spread before them. In 8 months of living together, they'd learned each other's rhythms. Daniel's morning grumpiness and Clara's night owl tendencies. His need for physical touch and her need for verbal affirmation. The way they both got quiet when stressed, requiring the other to notice and intervene. It wasn't always smooth. They'd had spectacular fights about finances, about parenting approaches, about whose career took priority on any given day. But they'd also learned to repair, to apologize, to compromise, to choose each other even when choosing was hard. I'm terrified of the wedding, Clara admitted suddenly. Because? What if I can't walk down the aisle? I've been training for months, working with Sarah specifically on endurance for that moment. But what if the day comes and my body doesn't cooperate? What if I fall? What if... Then you roll down the aisle, Daniel interrupted gently. Or I carry you, or we meet in the middle. Clara, I'm not marrying you for your ability to walk. I'm marrying you because you're brilliant and fierce, and you make terrible coffee but drink it anyway because you're too stubborn to admit defeat. I make excellent coffee. You make brown water that's vaguely coffee-flavored. He kissed her temple. Walk, roll, crawl, or fly down that aisle. I'll be at the end of it waiting. That's the only part that matters. But Clara knew it mattered to her, not because walking would make her more worthy or valid, but because she wanted the choice. Wanted to know she'd pushed herself as far as possible, that she'd reclaimed every piece of mobility available to her. The wedding became a goal, a milestone, a promise to herself that she could do hard things. Sarah, bless her, understood. They increased therapy sessions, added strength training, practiced walking in the dress Clara had chosen, a custom design with a shorter front so it wouldn't tangle in her wheelchair if needed, flowing into a longer train and back. Practiced on grass since the ceremony would be outside. Practiced with Daniel beside her as he'd be on the day, offering an arm but not support unless Clara needed it. You're going to do this, Sarah said the week before the wedding. I have no doubt. How can you be so sure? Because I've watched you fight for 2.5 years, because you're the most determined person I've ever met, and because you have an army of people who believe in you, Daniel, Maya, me, your entire company. You're not doing this alone. The night before the wedding, Clara barely slept. She'd sent Daniel and Maya to stay with his mother, tradition and also preservation of sanity, since Maya was vibrating with excitement at a frequency that made sleep impossible. Clara's penthouse felt too quiet, too empty without them. Her mother found her at 2 a.m. on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket against the spring chill. Couldn't sleep either, Margaret Whitfield said, settling into the chair beside her daughter's wheelchair. They'd had a complicated relationship since the accident. Her mother had wanted to swoop in and fix everything. Clara had needed to prove she could manage alone. But slowly, carefully, they'd rebuilt something real. I'm getting married tomorrow, Clara said wonderfully. That's a sentence I never thought I'd say again. He's good for you. They both are. Her mother was quiet a moment. I was wrong about a lot of things after your accident. I thought you needed protecting. Thought no man would want to take on the complications of your disability. Thought you should focus on your career and forget about family. Mom, let me finish. Margaret took Clara's hand. I was wrong because I was scared. Scared of you getting hurt again. Scared of you depending on someone who might leave like that fiancé did. But Daniel and Maya, they didn't see your wheelchair as a complication. They saw you, and watching you build a life with them, watching you choose vulnerability over safety. That's been the bravest thing I've ever witnessed. Clara felt tears, always tears these days, slide down her cheeks. I'm scared tomorrow. Scared I'll fall, scared I'll disappoint people, scared I'll fail at the one symbolic gesture everyone expects. Then fail, her mother said simply. Fail spectacularly in front of everyone. You know what they'll see? A woman trying, a woman refusing to hide, a woman marrying the love of her life however she can manage it. There's no failure in that, sweetie. Only courage. They sat together until dawn, watching the city wake up, talking about everything and nothing. When the sun finally rose, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Clara felt something settle in her chest. Ready or not, today was happening. The morning passed in a blur of preparation. Hair and makeup artists who'd been specifically briefed on working with someone in a wheelchair. The dress, gorgeous and functional, easier to move in than any formal wear Clara had owned. Maya appearing in her purple flower girl dress, spinning in circles and declaring herself the most beautiful person ever, except maybe Princess Clara. You're definitely the most beautiful, Clara assured her, adjusting the flower crown Maya had insisted on, and the bravest flower girl in the world. I'm not scared, Maya said confidently. Daddy says I just have to walk down and throw flowers, and then you and him get married and we're a real family. We're already a real family. Yeah, but after today it's official, like legal and everything. Daddy explained it. It means you can't leave even if you want to. Clara knelt down, carefully, dress pooling around her, so she was eye level with Maya. I don't want to leave. Not ever. You're stuck with me forever, legal or not, official or not. Okay? Okay. Maya threw her arms around Clara's neck. I love you, Mama Clara. It was the first time she'd said it directly, without thinking Clara couldn't hear. The words hit like a physical force, and Clara had to fight not to ruin her makeup with tears. I love you too, baby girl, so much. The ceremony was set for 4 p.m. By 3:30, Clara was ready, dressed perfect, hair arranged, makeup holding despite multiple crying sessions. She'd chosen not to use her wheelchair for the processional, had decided to walk if she possibly could. Her walker was decorated with flowers, positioned at the start of the aisle as backup if needed. Her mother and Jennifer helped her to the edge of the playground, where the path to the ceremony space began. 50 feet of grass, an accessible pathway. 50 feet that felt like miles. You can do this, Jennifer whispered. But if you can't, nobody cares. We're all just here to watch you marry that man who looks at you like you hung the moon. Clara looked down the aisle to where Daniel stood beside the arch, Maya already in position with her basket of flowers. He was wearing a suit that actually fit, his hair styled, his eyes locked on Clara like nothing else in the world existed. Behind them, the dragon sculpture Maya had designed stood guard, flowers woven through its frame exactly as she'd imagined. The music started. Maya began her walk, throwing flowers with enthusiasm rather than accuracy. Guests turned to watch, and Clara took her first step, then her second, then her third. She was walking down the aisle at her own wedding, slowly, carefully, her mother on one side ready to catch her if needed. But she was walking. Each step deliberate and earned, the product of months of therapy and determination and refusing to accept limitations. Halfway down the aisle, Clara's legs started trembling. She could feel her strength wavering, the familiar weakness that signaled she'd pushed too far. She had maybe 10 more feet in her, maybe 15, not enough to reach Daniel, not enough to complete this moment the way she'd planned. For a second, pride warred with reality. She could push through, force her body past its limits, probably make it to the end even if she collapsed immediately after. Or she could accept where she was and adjust accordingly. Clara looked up, met Daniel's eyes, and saw him mouth 3 words. I've got you. She stopped walking, stood still for a moment, acknowledging both what she'd accomplished and what she couldn't. Then she signaled to Jennifer, who brought her wheelchair forward. The guests held their breath. This was the moment. Would Clara see this as failure? Would she be devastated? Would the fairy tale be ruined? Clara transferred to her wheelchair smoothly, professionally, the way she'd done thousands of times. She adjusted her dress, smiled at the crowd, and then she rolled the rest of the way down the aisle with her head high and her heart full, her mother walking beside her, no shame or disappointment in her expression. She'd walked as far as she could, and that was enough. When she reached Daniel, he knelt down immediately so they were eye level, took her hands, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, not because you walked, though that was incredible, but because you knew when to stop. That's strength. I didn't make it all the way, Clara whispered. You made it all the way to me. That's the only distance that matters. The ceremony was beautiful. Maya managed to stay relatively still during the vows, only interrupting twice to ask when the dragon would do something. The officiant was a friend from Daniel's playground nonprofit who'd watched their relationship develop and wept through the entire reading. When it came time for vows, Daniel went first. Clara, I'm not good at words, but I'm good at showing up, at building things, at taking broken pieces and making them into something new. When I met you, I thought I was fine, thought I had accepted my life. Single father, struggling financially, future mapped out, and small. Then you asked Maya about her cookie, and you let me push your wheelchair onto a dance floor, and suddenly my life got bigger. Scarier. More full of possibility than I knew what to do with. You taught me that strength isn't independence, it's knowing when to ask for help. That love isn't finding someone perfect, it's choosing someone real. You made me brave enough to want more, to believe I deserved more. So I'm promising you, I'll show up. Every day, every struggle, every triumph. I'll build our life with the same care I build playgrounds, designed for inclusion, accessible to all, strong enough to last. I'll love Maya fiercely, but I'll love you just as fiercely. And I'll never stop being grateful that you said yes to a dance, to coffee, to this crazy, complicated, absolutely perfect life we're building. There wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Clara was actively sobbing. Makeup definitely ruined now, but she didn't care. Daniel Ross, she began when she could speak. The night we met, I thought I was fine too. I'd convinced myself that fine was enough, that surviving was the same as living, that I'd had my chance at love and lost it, and that was just how my story ended. But you and Maya refused to let me live small. You saw past the CEO, past the wheelchair, past the carefully constructed walls. You saw Clara, scared and lonely, and so desperate to be loved for exactly who she was. You gave me that, both of you. You gave me a family when I thought I'd forfeited that possibility. You gave me permission to be complicated, to struggle, to not have all the answers. You gave me Maya, who taught me that strength comes in all forms and love doesn't require perfection. So I'm promising you, I'll show up too. I'll use my resources to build the playgrounds you dream of. I'll be the mother Maya deserves. I'll choose us even when it's hard, even when work demands more, even when the world judges. I'll never stop fighting for accessibility, in the world and in our relationship. I'll love you in my wheelchair and on my feet, on good days and bad days, in sickness and in health for real this time, not just words. You said I made you brave, but Daniel, you made me alive. They were both crying now. Maya, confused by all the emotion, asked loudly, "Is crying part of weddings?" Which made everyone laugh through their tears. The officiant pronounced them married. Daniel kissed Clara like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Maya cheered and threw more flowers that she'd apparently kept in reserve. The dragon sculpture stood witness, flowers swaying in the spring breeze, and Clara realized this was what happy looked like, messy and imperfect and more beautiful than any fairy tale. The reception was at the playground itself, tables set up among the accessible equipment, children playing while adults celebrated. Maya had insisted that all the kids from her preschool be invited, resulting in a wedding that was half formal celebration and half child's birthday party. Clara couldn't have loved it more. During the first dance, Daniel lifted Clara from her wheelchair and held her while they swayed to music she'd chosen specifically for its meaning to them. She couldn't support her own weight for the full song, but she could for this moment. Could stand in her husband's arms and remember the first time he'd spun her wheelchair on a dance floor and made her feel possible. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest. "For what?" "For asking me to dance, for seeing me, for being patient while I learned how to let myself be loved. Thank you for saying yes, for all of it. The dance, the coffee, the moving in, the marriage. Thank you for choosing us." They danced until Clara's legs gave out. Then Daniel lifted her back to her wheelchair, and they danced that way instead. Him spinning her laughing, Maya running circles around them because she couldn't stand to be left out of dancing. Later, during toasts, Clara's CFO stood up with a knowing smile. "I've worked with Clara for 5 years. I've seen her build an empire, survive scandal, revolutionize an industry. But I've never seen her happy until this year. Daniel, Maya, you didn't change her. You just reminded her that success isn't the same as fulfillment, that empires are meaningless without people to share them with. You made her human again. Thank you for that. Daniel's mother spoke next, voice thick with emotion. I watched my son become a father alone, watched him struggle and sacrifice and pour everything into Maya while believing he didn't deserve his own happiness. Clara, you gave him permission to want more. You loved my granddaughter like she was your own from day one. You built accessible playgrounds so Maya and kids like her have spaces to belong. You changed our lives in ways I can't even articulate. Welcome to our family. We love you. But the most powerful toast came from Maya herself, who insisted on having the microphone even though she could barely reach the stand. I used to think families were just people who lived together and had the same last name, she announced to the crowd with 4-year-old confidence. But then Daddy and Princess Clara, Mama Clara, taught me that families are people who choose each other, who show up when you're sad, who celebrate when you do hard things, who let you design dragons for their wedding even though most weddings don't have dragons. This got a laugh from the crowd. Mama Clara has a cool chair, and sometimes she walks, and sometimes she doesn't, and that's okay because she's perfect the way she is. Just like I'm perfect the way I am, even though I walk different and my brain works different. Daddy says love means accepting all the parts, even the hard ones. So I'm happy we're officially a family now, with paper and everything. The end. She handed back the microphone and ran to climb onto Clara's lap, burying her face in the wedding dress. Clara held her tight, this child who'd appeared in her life offering cookies and unconditional acceptance, who taught her more about courage than any board meeting or business deal ever could. As the evening wore on, Clara found herself watching her wedding guests with new eyes. Disability advocates she'd met through her work, colleagues from Whitfield Technologies, families from the Playground Project, Daniel's construction crew, Maya's teachers and therapists, people from every corner of their lives, all celebrating this union that had seemed impossible a year ago. The blog that had tried to destroy them had instead revealed their strength. The gallery event that had exposed their differences had pushed them to build something that integrated both worlds. Every obstacle had become an opportunity to choose each other more firmly. Happy? Daniel asked, appearing beside her wheelchair, with Maya drowsing in his arms, the little girl finally exhausted from excitement. Deliriously, Clara took his free hand, though I think our flower girl is done for the night. She lasted longer than I expected. Kid has stamina. He looked down at his daughter, their daughter now, legally and in every way that mattered. Should we head out, start our first night as the officially married family? They decided against a honeymoon, choosing instead to take Maya to the beach house Clara had rented for a week. Family time rather than couple time, because that was who they were now. Not just two people in love, but 3 people building a life together. The guests sent them off with sparklers and cheers. Maya woke up long enough to throw flower petals from the car window, shouting, "We got married!" to confused pedestrians. When they finally arrived at Clara's penthouse, their home now, not just hers, it was after midnight. Daniel carried a sleeping Maya to her room, while Clara transferred to her everyday wheelchair, hanging her wedding dress carefully for preservation. When he returned, they collapsed together on the couch, where they'd had their first real conversation about being terrified together. "We did it," Daniel said wonderingly. "We actually got married, built a family, made this weird, impossible thing work." "It's not impossible if we're living it," Clara pointed out. "Maybe it was just improbable, but a lot of the best things are." They sat in comfortable silence, the city lights streaming through the windows, their sleeping daughter down the hall, marriage certificates signed and filed and official. Clara thought about the woman she'd been at that wedding almost 2 years ago, alone, isolated, convinced she'd forfeited happiness. If she could go back and tell that woman what was coming, she wouldn't believe it. "I keep thinking about what you said that first night," Clara murmured. "About loneliness, recognizing loneliness. And I don't feel lonely anymore. For the first time since the accident, maybe the first time in my whole life, I feel completely, utterly not alone." Daniel pulled her closer. "Good, because you're stuck with us now. Legally binding, no takebacks. Wouldn't dream of it. They fell asleep on the couch, tangled together, exactly where they'd been before, but different now. Changed by the choice to build something permanent from all their temporary pieces. When Maya woke them at dawn, demanding pancakes and asking if being married meant they could get a dog, they stumbled into their first morning as a married family with laughter and burnt pancakes, and the dog conversation that would apparently be ongoing. Clara watched Daniel flip pancakes while Maya narrated his every move and realized this was it. This was the life she'd been afraid to want, afraid to reach for, certain she didn't deserve. Not perfect, not a fairy tale. Just real and honest and full of a love that didn't require her to be anything other than exactly who she was. She'd walked partway down the aisle and rolled the rest. She'd built an empire while building a family. She'd faced public scrutiny and private doubt. She'd learned that healing wasn't linear, that strength had many forms, that love was choosing someone even when, especially when, it was complicated. Years later, when people asked about their story, Clara would tell them the truth. It wasn't about a CEO finding love despite her disability. It wasn't about a single father rescuing a lonely woman. It wasn't about overcoming or triumphing or any other inspiration-porn verb. It was about two broken people who found each other at a wedding and decided that maybe, just maybe, broken pieces could fit together into something whole. It was about choosing vulnerability over safety, honesty over performance, messy reality over polished perfection. It was about a little girl with a cookie who saw a woman in a wheelchair and thought, cool chair, instead of can't. Who taught both adults that different wasn't less, that families were chosen, that love was shown through presence rather than perfection. And it was about Clara Whitfield, tech CEO, wheelchair user, wife, mother, learning that the bravest thing she ever did wasn't building a billion-dollar company or standing up to critics or walking down an aisle. It was saying yes when a wrinkled single dad asked her to dance. It was opening her heart to a 3-year-old with a dragon obsession. It was choosing to live instead of just survive. That was the real story. Not a fairy tale, just life, lived fully, with all its complications and triumphs and everything in between. And it was more than enough. It was everything.